This is Alan.
Woo! Let's go!
Before the first pitch, he's at the top of his banking game. With the Wells Fargo mobile app, he's using Zelle to settle up with his friends for that hot dog and drink, and checking his account balances. For Alan, it's the game day bank. This is your right here, right now bank. This is Wells Fargo.
Zelle is available to United States bank account holders only. Terms and conditions apply. Message and data rates may apply. The Zelle service is property of Early Warning Services, LLC. Wells Fargo Bank N.A. member FDIC.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, you are listening to a Raduiich Broadcasting Network premier podcast, Damn You, Hollywood. And now, here's your host. This is how he dances, because he's not wearing any pantses. It's Robert Winfree. Yay!
You know, I'm deeply disappointed in you for that intro.
Because I said pantses?
Among other things. That was just really not at all your A material.
I had really nothing prepared. The last time I had something good prepared for you was when we did Hannibal, where I was going to introduce you as this is a shy boy, and forgot to do it. I probably could have done it here, but Hannibal, same genre, but not really the same thing. So you mentioned something about dancing or lyrical, or I don't know, you babbled something with big words. And so I thought, oh, dance. Okay, this is how I dance when I'm not wearing any pants. Robot Chicken, good.
I don't watch Robot Chicken.
It doesn't matter what you watch. It only matters what I watch. Me. I'm the only one that matters, because I'm the only one
Well,
mark it
they're
off on
singing.
the bingo card. Yeah, I was like, mark it off on the bingo card, folks.
All right, with that bit of chicanery out of the way, I'm Robert Winfree. This is Damn You Hollywood. That's Mark Raduiich, and we're not entirely sure. This is what happens when we make Mark review horror movies. He just goes all goofy as a method of coping with the harsh realities of existence.
Is that
I thought this was what happens when he's locked inside during a hurricane. He just goes batshit insane.
All work and no podcasting makes Mark a dull boy.
It really does. I go a day without podcasting. I start kicking in my children's doors going, here's Johnny. Then I break into the Simpsons routine, which I can't remember, but you know it, Robert. You know all the Simpsons routines.
There's no one in there. He kicks open the door again. He hacks open David Letterman. Hi, David. I'm Grandpa. Oh! That's Marshall Wallace. I'm Ed Rudy, and all this and more tonight on 60 Minutes. He's actually got a stopwatch. And then everyone else goes, because 60 Minutes is awful. And then they start running.
There we go.
Anyway, you've heard Alexis Hejna a couple of times now, back here for our show this evening. How you doing, Alexis?
Blowing off my anniversary dinner to talk about killer psychotic clowns. Doing well.
I mean, priorities.
And that man you hear clanging pots and pans together is Jason Teasley.
I am not clanging pots and pans together.
Yet. Feel free to do so at a later point in time. Like when Mark tries to run the Podcoin advertisement that we're going to absolutely remember to run in the middle of this episode.
Yes, I actually have to renew the Podcoin ad thing tonight, so I got to write down when we're doing that.
All right.
Everyone remember before the CPAP starts calling him.
Yes.
We'll just hijack your CPAP, and it will call you by saying, post the ad. Ad space.
Just tell me to do it before the month.
Ad space.
Instead of usually going jiggly-pop.
Just drawing all over his face with marker. I know.
Just tell me to do it before the punny.
This went off the rails real quick.
Rails.
It didn't start on the rails.
We have not seen the rails yet.
For the 88th time, just tell me to do it before the money. Everyone yell at me. Just like, the money, before the money, Podcoin.
Hey, Mark.
Yes, sir.
Hey, Mark. Do Podcoin before the money.
Thank you, Jason.
Mark, before we get into the money, and that's a really good time to run the advertisement.
That's good. 4 minutes and 45 seconds into this podcast, you're telling me this. Fantastic. Wait
I
till
told
the
you
money, goddammit.
Look, I told you. That's it. I told you before it was supposed to be done. You didn't put a time limit on how soon to do it. Anyway.
Exactly. So you've been reminded twice, so now it's on Alexis
on
to
you.
remind you at some point.
Because I'm the only one. Go ahead.
All right. Tonight we are reviewing It Chapter 2. And Mark rather famously bailed on me reviewing It Chapter 1 by claiming that there was a hurricane and his boss was locking him in the jail for 48 hours.
I was sequestered along with all the other medical staff at the local jail because of the hurricane.
And his wife was deeply unhappy and nervous about the hurricane, so she wouldn't let him out of the house when he wasn't sequestered at the jail. Basically, the dog ate his homework.
And somehow this became the plot for Crawl, and
You're not wrong. But he managed to avoid the worst of Hurricane Dorian, which coincidentally the worst actually avoided, most of the United States. Flattened the Bahamas, though, just bulldozed.
Yeah, depending on your source, it may have hit Alabama.
I don't know, did it? Hey,
I don't know. Who's got a Sharpie?
Dear Mr. President, at least one person on this podcast hates you. I wonder who it is.
I'm on the ambivalent side at the moment. Alrighty. And Mark is a full-blown Trumpy.
Side note, Mark, we are really happy that you and your family are safe and were not hurt by Hurricane Dorian. We're glad you guys are okay.
I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
speak for yourself. I'm worried about his wife and kids, not him.
Yeah, well, I'm trying to butter up to the boss, okay? Just call me the apple polisher.
Okay. Will do.
Sounds right. Okay.
Good night, everybody.
And that's it for It Chapter 2.
All right. So anyway, the point being, Mark, I believe you saw Chapter 1. Did you see Chapter 1 before or after Chapter 2? Because I know you've seen it at least once by now, but which one did you see first?
Chapter 1.
Okay, so you did rent it or whatever on Amazon or what have you before actually seeing this movie.
I own this son of a bitch now. I can watch it as many times as I want.
You're never going to watch it again.
Never in your life.
Radio, DVD, or Blu-ray?
Digital. I don't own digital.
Oh, okay.
I don't own physical media, woman. Dirty up, clutter up my house with all your Blu-rays and your DVDs and your knickknacks and your wickety-whacks and your paddywhacks. No, thank you.
He doesn't carry peasant paper either.
That's actually exactly what my husband says to me whenever I ask if I could go buy more DVDs. He doesn't like the clutter either.
Exactly.
So, okay, I just couldn't remember the chronology of that for you, but for those curious about my thoughts on it, Chapter 1, you can delve into the archives or listen to our review of
Pet Cemetery.
Pet Cemetery, yeah, when we spent most of it talking about it, because it's a better movie.
Yeah, everyone asked me what I thought about Pet Cemetery, and I was telling them our podcast spent most of the time talking about it. I think that tells you all you need to know.
I agree with that. So, It Chapter 2 picks up 30 years after the events of It Chapter 1 come to a conclusion. We open with events in Derry. Really nice gay couple gets attacked by a gang of small-minded thugs. One of them gets beaten to a bloody pulp and then tossed off a bridge into the river, where he is rescued from drowning by Pennywise the dancing clown, who proceeds to take a giant chunk out of his torso. The other half of the couple who had come down to try and rescue his boyfriend sees this and sees a bunch of balloons floating out from under the bridge and just nopes out. Pennywise also leaves a message that is discovered by Mike Hanlon, who, of the original Losers Club, is the only one that remained behind in the city of Derry, just on the off chance that they didn't actually kill it. And, hey, this is a sequel. They didn't.
Can I jump in real quick? I've got a little story to tell you guys about this.
Sure.
So my husband and I went to go see this at the Thursday night premiere. And we run in just right around, I think, like a minute to the movie's supposed to start. And we're like, oh, it's okay. There's going to be trailers and whatnot. But the movie starts. No trailers or anything. We're thinking, well, they're cutting this kind of close. And the film starts. And after this poor man is beaten, nearly drowned, and has his chest eaten, then you get to the scene where Mike is looking under the bridge. And right before they reveal what it says, the screen goes black and the movie stops. And you get about 100 people in a theater going, was this supposed to happen? Was this part of the movie? Like, you could hear this echo of everyone saying the same thing. Manager comes in and says there was a mistake because they were supposed to air the trailers. They weren't, technically the movie wasn't supposed to start till 7:15, 15 minutes after the start time. So they're going to restart it for anyone who's coming in a few minutes late. But I got to watch that scene of this poor, wonderful gay couple getting the shit beaten out of them twice.
And it was magical, right?
Oh, yeah, glorious.
It's a well-shot sequence.
Can I tell you how I thought the gay guy gets the shit beat out of him for a moment was Eddie? And I'm like, oh, wait a minute, that's not the right actor. But I was almost convinced that it was.
They do kind of look a lot. He does kind of look like the kid. You're right.
Fair enough. So anyway, Mike winds up he now knows that it has returned, and he, in service to the job he actually took up, he calls all the rest of the Losers Club and says, hey, we all made a promise. It's not dead. You have to come back, and we're going to finish it this time. So we now get to see where all of the losers have wound up in life. And the answer is wildly successful in many respects. Bill Deneba is a successful novelist and screenwriter who just apparently can't write endings for crap. I have to imagine their decision to include that bit of his character as a means of padding out the movie was just a rib at Stephen King.
Yep, that is exactly what that was intended.
Considering
that's what I thought it was.
So that's what he's doing. He and his wife are a little bit on the outs, apparently going through a bit of a rough patch. At least that's what's intimated based on the singular scene that we see them in. Beverly is now a successful fashion designer, but is married to an abusive jackwagon, who she manages to, again, kind of escape from, and leaves to return to Derry. Bill's obviously en route as well. Ben Hanscom, who is utterly unrecognizable from his childhood self, is a very successful architect and also amenable to returning. Richie has become a stand-up comedian, a fairly successful one at that. His reaction to Mike calling and saying, hey, you got to come back, is to immediately vomit. But he then bombs a stand-up set, or at least part of it. But he does wind up going back. Eddie has become a risk assessment manager, something. Again, an assessor of risk management. That thing that George Costanza pretended to do for an episode of Seinfeld, that's what he actually does, and makes a lot of money doing it. And has, if I might quote the novel when it comes to Eddie's wife, he married his mother and he knew it.
Same actress.
Really nice touch then. I didn't recognize again, they have different hair and different style, different hair, and his wife's on the screen very briefly, but that's a nice touch if they actually did literally have the same actress.
Yeah, I looked up on IMDb later, I wanted to check a couple of casting lists, and I saw them like, wait a minute, click. Oh, no way, because, yeah, in the books, he pretty much did marry someone exactly like his mother. So, you're right, that was a nice touch.
All women marry their father, all boys marry their mother.
That is
And
not
as complex as...
Which leads us to the last member of the Losers Club, Stanley, who's an accountant, I believe. Now, Stanley is the only one who doesn't wind up making the trip back to Derry. In fact, when he loosely agrees to the notion of going back...
Speaking of noping out.
Yeah, he takes a nice long warm bath and slits his wrists. I'm going to save that for Kraft. It can wait. So he doesn't make it. The Losers Club convenes at a Chinese restaurant in Derry, Maine, because, the best food in Maine is Chinese, I suppose. They all get back together, they share laughs, they reminisce, and then Mike kind of reminds them, because the further you get away from the city of Derry, the more your memories of it in particular fade. So the Losers Club in general, apart from Mike, don't actually remember the majority of what happened to them. As they are back in Derry, it starts coming back to them, and a lot of the first half or so of the movie is them slowly regaining their memories, what they remember, getting some flashbacks. It decides to torment them with a little bit of its, quasi-illusory magic. Initially, they all of them except Bill decide, you know what, nuts to this. And they're going to leave. They head out. What winds up keeping them around, and again, I have a Kraft issue with this. When they find out that Stanley killed himself, and Beverly has a bit of intuition / memory about this, about seeing him dead. When they all kind of go, wait a minute, what do you mean by that? Her response is that when she was hypnotized by the deadlights in Chapter 1, one of the things she saw was all of them committing suicide at various points in their life. And they come to the conclusion that that their encounter with it as children left within them something that is rotting them, essentially. That is, if left unchecked, going to drive all of them to suicide before the next 30-year cycle is up. And this means that if they would like to avoid gruesome mutilation-related deaths, they have to confront this here and now and put an end to it. Because there's nothing like the sword of Damocles to spur forward the plot. So they all agree. They decide, okay, we're going to do something about this. Mike has discovered, courtesy of the Native Americans who live just outside the reach of it, convenient, that there is a ritual that they performed in the past to kind of contain or attack it, and he would like to recreate it, and part of what they need are memories of their childhood, of when they encountered it before. And they all head out on their own to kind of wander about the town and find their bits of childhood remembrance.
They're Horcruxes, they're tokens.
AKA side quest.
Yeah. This is their fetch quest. So they all spend some time wandering around. They all find something and are all also accosted by it to one degree or another. Bill finds a couple of things, actually. He finds his old bicycle from the night, which even in the 80s was kind of an antique relic from the 50s or 60s. He finds that in a pawn shop run by Stephen King. He then also winds up finding his actual remembrance. He is able to kind of find the storm drain where Georgie was killed, and does in fact find a version of the boat that Georgie was playing with that day. He also encounters just a random kid who lives in Derry, and this kid is now being stalked by it. We also see it.
Say, not just a random kid. That kid's living in Bill's old house.
True. Yeah, the family that lives there now, they have a small boy who's being stalked by it. We also see it devour a small girl. So it's the point being that the creature is still active and hunting and doing all the terrible things that it normally does. Beverly goes to her old apartment where she encounters the reanimated corpse of a woman, sort of. The whole thing's actually an illusion. She finds the postcard that had the haiku on it written by Ben Hanscom that she initially attributed to Bill, back in the 80s. Eddie finds a copy of his inhaler in the basement under the pharmacy that is still being run by the same father-daughter duo from the 80s. He's also accosted by it. He has a vision of his mother being menaced and attacked by the leper that attacked him in his childhood. Ben does not encounter it necessarily. He has a memory of a time he was attacked by it. He doesn't actually reacquire any sort of remembrance. He has always carried with him in his wallet the singular page in his yearbook from that year that was signed, and Bev was the only one who signed it. So he carries that with him, and that's what he winds up offering. They go to their old a clubhouse that apparently...
You forgot Richie.
I'll get to him in a second. They go to a club. They get something for Stanley. He gave them a bunch of hairnets for a clubhouse that was somewhat underground that Ben had apparently, not fully excavated, but reinforced and kind of built for them to hang out in. Richie goes to an old arcade. Can I just say this? Brief aside, I'm trying to keep these to a minimum. But him walking into the deserted, derelict movie theater, and the last movie poster on there that's kind of torn was the last thing they showed was "You've Got Mail." I have never felt so old watching a movie in my life.
It's weird when people reference something from 2000, 2001, and they say back in the day.
Yeah.
Oh, God. We're not that old.
Yeah, seriously. For some reason...
Speak for yourself, sister. Yeah.
Yeah.
Even then, you're not that old, Mark.
You got me and Grandpa Mark here.
Look, I know that you guys went to go see Gone with the Wind 30 times a piece with an onion tied to your belt, which was the style at the time.
Yeah.
Again, with the Simpsons reference. Should we put Simpsons reference on the bingo card?
Yes, we definitely need a Simpsons reference on there.
I make a lot of them.
Almost as many Family Guy references as I make.
I was going to say, considering your comments when I posted The Simpsons reading The Raven the other day on my Facebook page, you and Ben going at it.
Oh, yeah. We do that a lot when we cross paths in exchanges like that. We both, just all the time.
Benjamin Poland, we love you.
Oof. He's going to throw something at you for pronouncing his last name like that.
How do you pronounce it?
I believe he's ethnically Puerto Rican. It's Colon.
Okay, in my defense, I have never actually heard it pronounced. I've only seen it written. Whenever someone talked about it before, it was just Ben or Benjamin. I apologize.
Yeah, I think his mother's Puerto Rican. He was born here. He was born in New York.
You mean I've been pronouncing his last name wrong this whole time? Because I thought it was ham sandwich. Move on.
Mark, you're Jewish, you don't eat ham.
That's a lie.
Well, half a lie.
Half a lie.
Anyway, Richie goes to an old arcade that is shut down and finds a game token. And you know what? Credit to him for actually on the old machine buying the game token and not just cracking it open. I applaud the honesty.
And it was the original Street Fighter 2. Not Street Fighter 2. It was the original Street Fighter.
I deeply appreciated that. As he's leaving, though, he is accosted by Pennywise again. And Pennywise kind of talks him into running for the second time. And forgive me, I can't remember if it's after this point that they discover that they're all going to kill themselves before they're 50, or if it's later. But point being, that's still the impetus. He threatens to tell all of Richie's friends his dirty secret because in this version of the story, Richie's a closeted homosexual. So they all wind up reconvening. They convince Richie to stay. Well, he's ready to leave, and then Henry Bowers, who survived the horrible fall down the well and trip through the sewer system back in the 80s, and has been confined to a mental institution since, escapes, like you do, and winds up stabbing Eddie in the face. Eddie returns the favor and stabs him in the chest. Does not kill him, despite that being both a deep stab and one localized in a dangerous area. Henry escapes. Henry tries to attack Mike later, but Richie shows up and tomahawks him, literally with a tomahawk in the back of the head. They all gather up. Bill fails to stop the kid from being taken. This is the famous scene from the trailer where they're stuck in the mirror maze. Yeah, the clown gets the kid. Bill then decides to head off on his own because he won't let anyone else die. He's still dealing with elements of his own guilt related to Georgie's death. They all show up anyway because, well, they all want to take out the clown too. They head down into the sewers. They go further beyond from where they originally encountered it. Again, Mike has kind of shared with Bill by this point the origins of it as a creature that fell from the sky a long time ago. It is a literal alien. So the guy from the History Channel is just singing and dancing. They head down to the actual point of impact. So this is again below its lair from where they encountered it in the first movie. They go deeper. They try to perform the ritual. The ritual doesn't actually work. It didn't work back in the day. It doesn't really work now. So it takes the form of a giant hybridized spider clown
crab. It's a spider clown crab.
Okay,
it's something that's going to show up in a lot of fan art here very soon. I'll keep you guys abreast when I go to Cincinnati Comic Expo.
Crab people.
I would bet you even money that you're going to find a dozen artist representations better than what they gave us on screen.
Well, at least it was better than what they gave us in the 1990 movie. First time I saw that, I think my literal reaction was, "What in the name of Harryhausen is that shit?"
I've never seen the original yet.
It's on YouTube. Look it up when you get a chance. It's not. Again, it's dated in many respects, and like this telling of the story, all the good stuff happens in the flashbacks.
So I have a theory.
All right. Can I finish the synopsis, or does this have to come now?
It has to come now.
Okay.
So I think the producer who worked on the Superman movie with Nick Cage, who insisted that there had to be a giant spider in that movie, and then
the one Kevin Smith talked about in his in that famous speech.
And so so that movie dies on the vine, and that spider ends up in Wild Wild West. And it's a stupid movie, and everyone hates it, and this man is made a fool. And I don't think he's ever really gotten over it. So he insisted, based on what's in the book, but he insisted same crazy giant spider had to be in it. And I feel like this is a guy who's at every meeting and every movie he puts notes on says giant spider, to the point where people laugh at him in the office behind his back because he's a powerful man.
No, they laugh to his face.
Let's face it, if he was in control, he wouldn't have Pennywise looking like a clown. Need to remind you, this is the same guy who didn't want Superman to fly or have a cape.
I find it funny that this is a movie put up by Warner Brothers Pictures, and yet again, giant spider.
At least in this case, there's a reason for it, but I'll get to that when I talk about the because I talked about this a little bit with the first part, a little bit of compare and contrast, and I do want to have between the source material and this, what I thought worked and what didn't in terms of what you can change, what you can't change, how you can change something, but what it affects down the line, et cetera, and I think that is a more productive discussion here because they changed more stuff for
Has
better
anyone
and for worse.
Has anyone else besides Robert read the book?
You godless heathens.
Books are for burning.
There we go.
Thank you, Jason.
I hate you all. I will say this, in fairness, even by Stephen King standards, it is pretty lengthy. And given that you all have the attention span of 4-year-olds with ADD on cocaine, I tolerate your existence. So
I'm a little insulted, Robert.
have you read it?
Of course not.
Uh-huh. My statement stands.
No, I don't have the attention span of, what was it, a 4-year-old on cocaine? I have
An
the
80
attention span of I have the attention span of a goldfish on meth with ADD.
Goldfish have.
Speaking of
longer-
ADD, continue this plot synopsis. I want to talk about the movie.
You're the one who derailed it. So they encounter it. They can't quite. They try to formulate plans to escape. It winds up isolating a bunch of them. There's been a bit of a, will she, won't she with Bev realizing that.
Ben,
thank you. God, his name just blanked. I was going to say Haystacks because in the original novel, the nickname that Richie gives him is Haystacks after Haystacks Calhoun, the very large professional wrestler.
I was calling him Chris Pat Cumberbatch.
Yeah, he looks. That's really not inaccurate. Like I saw that and went, Nicholas Hoult actually manned up a little bit. Nope. Not
Oh
Nick
God,
Hoult.
he does. He looks like all three of those in a.
I know. It's like, okay, we want one of these three guys. We can't get him, but we got this guy who looks like you put all their faces into one of those merge them together software things. Just hire that guy.
In all fairness, actually, the kid who played Ben in the first movie, they asked all the kids, who would you pick to play your adult version? He picked Chris Pratt, and I think Chris Pratt would have actually been, nothing against this guy, he does a good job, but I think Chris Pratt could have been pretty good in the role. And
Yeah.
he does look like what I think this kid will look like when he gets older and sexier.
Yeah, just minor aside, all of the casting that they were able to pull off in this movie was tremendous. So they confront it. Mike winds up being reminded of a bit of Indian lore about how anything that changes its shape must abide by the rules of the new shape it inhabits. Eddie winds up saving Richie, who gets very nearly dead-lighted and eaten, but then is impaled through the chest and winds up dying. But he gives them a bit of the information that they need about how to really combat the creature, and a lot of it is actually the power of their belief. It's feeding on their fear. So when they all kind of collectively, genuinely believe that this is nothing but a clown, and a very small one at that, it does slowly shrink and is kind of beaten down by the collective force of their will and their belief in just how irrelevant and insignificant it is. Then Mike yanks his heart out and they all crush it. Its lair collapses. They have to leave Eddie behind. Richie, it's wind up revealed cinematically that Richie used to have a crush on Eddie. They all they all mourn his passing, console Richie a little bit. Bill goes back to writing now with the magical ability to end a story correctly. Bev and Ben, thank you. I don't know why that is blanking in my head. Beverly and Ben start a romantic relationship. Mike is able to leave Derry behind once and for all and go back out in the world. And Richie presumably becomes secure enough in his own sexuality to not be blackmailed by floating interdimensional spider monsters. And they all then get a copy of a letter from Stanley, who says that the primary reason he committed suicide was he knew he couldn't actually deal with coming back to Derry to deal with the problem, and if he wasn't there, he knows that they couldn't actually defeat it, so he took himself off of the board. Because nobility of suicide. Yay. we close with with a bit of the loser's credo, and them all promising to, remain true to each other and themselves. They all keep their memories this time, and fade into the sunset, kind of thing. I don't know. I have issues with the ending.
All right.
Anyway,
so let me jump in here.
By all means.
I want to talk a little bit because here's the thing. All like gimmickry and comedy aside, we've said a zillion times on this show, horror is not my favorite genre. It's one that I've watched plenty of movies in it. There's a certain type that I like, but I don't even want to get into that so much. I want to talk actually about what I think is good horror, and why I had such a difficult time with this movie, because I don't think it's particularly good. I think it's well acted. I think some of the stuff looks okay. Robert's more of the CGI critic than I am.
Oh boy.
And so I'll kind of leave it to you to make a judge. I'm not even going to weigh in on that. But that's really the only thing I can say about it, is that it's well acted. The material given to the actors is handled well, but I don't think the material is really any good. I don't think the structure of this movie is particularly good. But I think it's only fair that people know where I'm coming from. So I think one of the best horror movies I've ever seen, and probably one of the best in the genre, is the original Nightmare on Elm Street. I think it's low-hanging fruit. Okay, what is that in the back? Sorry, had to pause the show for a second. All right, so I think the best one, if not the best movie in the horror genre, is the original Nightmare on Elm Street. There's a very specific reason why I think it's the best, and probably my measuring stick for all of the horror movies. It's very much, in my opinion, low-hanging fruit to do what this movie does, which is create an ugly thing and throw it at high speeds at the screen while it screams "boogie oogie oogie" at you. The concept of the jump scare, the camera shoots at a thing, quickly turns, and there it is again, boogie woogie oogie. The beauty in horror is the ability to give the audience a true psychological fear, a true psychological scare, to really to unsettle you. Horror shouldn't just be an action movie with gross things, which is what this one is. Nightmare on Elm Street had things that were gross in it, obviously. Freddy's gross. A lot of what he does is gross. Blood all over the room, gross. But Freddy is also unsettling. The concept of being in a position of not having any power because you're in a dream that he controls, and and there's all the stuff that he can do, and and what's even worse is the idea of being in the real world and making yourself having to stay awake despite everything working against you, because if you fall asleep you die. These are things that I think dig into people's psyches and souls, and I think that's where the true good horror lies. When I get done with this, if someone wants to rebut, that's fine, but that's how I feel. Look, I like a good slasher flick. I like, people being, some guy running around chasing you with a knife. That's why I like the Scream movies. They're also, at least the first one or two are two of my favorites. I don't mind the Halloween movies, that sort of thing. But the idea of something being unsettling, psychologically terrifying, something that stays with you. I think that's why I've always had a difficulty with the genre, is that there are things that truly frightened me as a kid that I never really got over as an adult. Now, some of those things aren't scary to other people, and I don't really want to get into a why Mark's a pansy side quest conversation. But suffice to say, I think that's where horror movies succeed and where they fail. I think they fail when it's just jump scares and gross things flying at the screen. I think they succeed when they unsettle and stay with you. Does that make sense to you, Robert?
Yeah, look, I'm happy anytime we have these discussions to bust out what I still consider to be the most accurate discussion about the three types of horror movies. Because it comes from Stephen King, actually. I put forth in his book Dance Macabre that there are essentially three kinds or levels to scary stories or movies or whatnot. The pinnacle of which is genuine terror. It's the stuff that really sticks with you. And this can kind of be for whatever reason, but it's the stuff that really kind of gets into your bones and will scare you the next day.
Right.
Then there's, horror, which is to act. You are a little bit horrified at what's happened. You are reacting, but it's kind of just it still gets into your head, but it's not the same. It's the kind of scary that tends to stay in the theater when you leave. Mm-hmm. And then finally is the gross out,
right? Torture
which
porn.
Is just he wrote this pre-torture porn existing. One of the things he references in this is actually that a really great, scary movie can do all three of these things. And he references Alien, which has a lot of all three elements. You have the psychological terror.
I was going to say, The Nightmare on Elm Street and Alien kind of, 1A and 1B for me in terms of the best horror I've ever seen.
I do need to point out there's an Australian movie I think you need to see that I don't know how you'll react to.
If you tell me it's the Babadook, I'm going to hit
I
you.
am.
I love the Babadook. That was great.
It's great. Mark won't see it.
Well, now, this is... Okay, Gavin. Every time you're so easily challenged, well, Mark fell asleep on The Master. It's like The Master. I'm going to make myself watch this just so that conversation can end. Now I'm going to have to sit through the fucking Babadook.
Look, just again, for the record, I'm happy to say this on occasion when it comes up. I watched that movie middle of the day in my living room, and it freaked me out.
Terrific. Can't wait.
Yeah, the Babadook is kind of creepy, but no, it's no Candyman.
Oh, Candyman's a good movie. Anyway, the point being,
which is getting remade by Jordan Peele.
Yep.
I'm deeply conflicted about that.
I'm deeply considering putting it on the schedule.
I'm actually all for it because Jordan Peele hasn't let us down yet with horror films.
You and I had a very different experience with both of his movies.
Hey, I want to get back to this. So finish your point.
No, I largely agree with you about what makes a good horror movie in that respect. And there's a lot of stuff that goes for, I hate to say cheap and easy, but there's a lot of stuff that frequently gets put out that has elements that are kind of cheap and easy. And there's a fair bit of that at various points in this movie, and I have my own issues that I want to get to when it's my turn, but I'm not disagreeing with you.
I don't think modern audiences could sit through one of the best superhero movies of all time, Superman 2. And so there's a reason why superhero movies get made the way they get made today, and not the way they got made in the late 70s, early 80s.
Wait, theatrical cut or Donner cut?
Superman 2?
Yeah.
The Donner cut.
Okay.
I didn't say the original Superman because I still hate the time travel thing. But that one is largely considered the best Superman movie. And the whole point of me bringing all of that up is that when I sat and I thought about what I was watching with It 2, and I compared it to the first one largely works for me because the children... In a situation that they can't control, they barely understand, is more interesting to me than the adults being brought back in to remember and then have to basically do the same thing all over again. Because at the end of the day, the point of It Chapter 1 was the kids had to save Beverly and kill the clown. And then in this one, the kids had to kill the clown, only they're adults. So I don't feel like It Chapter 2 is a very compelling movie. I mean, it got made because the first one did really, really well and because it was the second half of this book. Two good enough reasons to go for it. But honestly, I think the story is told with that first half with the kids, in my personal opinion. So agree or disagree, at least you know where I'm coming from. When you think about A Nightmare on Elm Street and Alien, they had a quality about them that this one doesn't have, and that is quiet. I'm much more afraid in a eerily quiet situation than I am in a Slayer concert, which is what this fucking sounds like at times. It's just banging and clanging and, it's Jason Teasley banging pots and pans together and slamming his dick into the stove. It's just over and over again. There's a clown coming out.
God, man, that's brutal. I mean, I don't self-loathe that much.
It's just clowns and grossness coming at the screen and pots and pans, and it's over and over and over again. This movie is so redundant, and I understand there's an element of horror. That is an element of the modern horror movie. It's quiet, exposition, character building, maybe, if you're lucky. And then there's a set piece where there's loud clanging, banging, and things coming at the screen and being generally gross. And then just rinse, repeat until you get to the conclusion. So this movie rings a bit hollow for me. Like I said, I like the actors. Shout out to the guy who plays Eddie, because he was in The Wire. Mark it on your bingo cards, ladies and gentlemen. But just for time and to get everybody else involved in the discussion, I got bored, and I got bored because of the repetition. And it's like, okay, but you didn't say you got bored during Hobbs and Shaw. Well, that came down to personal thing. I would rather watch people getting punched and things exploding than gross shit coming at me on screen. So that's a very personal thing, and I think maybe that's where I'm going to differ from other people who enjoy that sort of thing, but I don't.
Yeah, for the record, I was profoundly bored by Hobbs and Shaw.
There you go. But I mean, structurally, it's the same thing. There's exposition telling you, what is the point of this movie and setting up the characters and, getting to know some people. Then they blow things up and punch stuff. Then there's quiet exposition, and it goes on and on and on until they're done punching things. This one, it was the same damn thing, down to they're done punching the clown. To me, the clown would have worked better as something ethereal. Again, much like Freddy. As a giant crab monster, I was just like, just call in the Avengers. Can we please? This is just, at least then I have something colorful to watch on screen instead of the same drab, monochrome, ugly, dark grayish that I've been looking at for the past hour.
That is no longer true, for the record.
What?
They're not gonna have the same brightly colored stuff going forward. You and I both watched Captain Marvel, which was very flat color, just so her sparkle could stand out.
It depends on the director. I think the next Black Panther will be wonderfully colorful. It'll be brightly colored, rainbow colored, if you will.
No.
So will Doctor Strange.
Yeah, maybe.
So I mean, I'm willing to hear a counterpoint to any of this, but yeah, I don't think this was a well done movie. I think it was. I wouldn't go as far as to say it's a cash grab. I think time and care was put into it, but I don't think much imagination was. And therefore, without the imagination, I think it lacks as a horror movie. I think it's just, like I said, a structural action movie with gross shit. Alexis?
I agree on some of your parts, but there are parts that I disagree on. I'm going to go ahead and tackle the giant crab monster first. See, in the original 1990 miniseries, we do see a crab spider flaming piece of crap that has not aged well at all.
Yeah, Mark, if you haven't actually seen, have you seen it? I have
okay,
not. Don't look up the whole miniseries. You can find pictures. You can find just a bit of that thing. Look it up. It looks terrible.
Okay.
You know what? Here, actually, I'm going to go ahead and Google it on my phone, and I'll send it to you guys via text.
Oh boy.
But I'll do that after my little spiel here. I felt that the crab monster in this was more so. Well, I know it's called It, but I'm just going to say Pennywise. Was more so Pennywise taking on a pseudo ultimate form. Its naturalistic form, I felt, was what we saw with the dead lights, those lights that were going into the urn kind of thing during the ritual of Chud. when it escapes, it basically says, "Oh, you think you can kill me? Check this shit out," and it morphs into this giant creature. And I will say that when it was a little silly looking, but when it opened its mouth to flash the deadlights, that fort was actually scary. That fort with the mouth open like that on those giant spider legs, that did freak me out a bit. And there were some decent scares in this. Robert, you are right. The scenes with the kids are better, and it's proof because the scenes with the kids in this movie are better. I was genuinely a little, on edge when Pennywise goes after the little boy in the mirror house, even though we've seen a lot of the scenes in the trailer. And the scene with the little girl under the bleachers was very well done.
Yes. I see, for time, I kind of cut myself short, but the one genuinely terrifying scene in this movie for me was the scene with the girl. But when you think about what's happening in that scene, you have a perfectly innocent, defenseless child being manipulated by this horrible clown, and then it murders her. None of that's pleasant, and it wasn't particularly gross
I have a
either.
more terrifying scene, and the only thing I got is old woman saggy titties.
That was a giant.
That terrified me.
I'm sure.
Okay, I'm not going to talk about the CGI because that is Robert's wheelhouse, and I don't want to usurp him.
No, go ahead. It's so bad.
Yeah, it's clear that the majority of the CGI budget went to the giant crab spider thing at the end, which, while scary looking, is the most realistic looking of the CGI. But the leper, the creepy old woman, the rest, it is so bad. But again, there were some scenes that did get me. I'm actually going to say there were two parts that genuinely freaked me out. One, the reveal of the Paul Bunyan statue, because that just banged right in. I was not expecting to just kind of throw that in all of a sudden. That did kind of make me jump. No comments?
Nope, keep going.
Okay. And the other one, and this is going to sound a little weird, but this was actually the part that freaked me out the most. We got the scene at the end in the cave, and Richie starts throwing rocks at it, trying to distract it, and he's doing what he does best. He's trash-talking it. And then mid-sentence, he deadlights him, and Richie just goes totally limp mid-moment. And it was so sudden and a total whiplash of everything. And oh my God, I nearly dropped my drink at that.
The movie will affect different people different ways for any variety of reasons. And like I said, I'm not saying my review, is the best review given now. I'm already coming into it kind of negative. I was really trying to give it a chance, and especially after the first one, because I really liked the first one. There are a handful of horror movies that I've watched the Alien movies tons of times, and they are considered horror sci-fi. I've watched all the original Nightmare on Elm Street movies. I've watched all the Screams. I've watched, because of the podcast, I've done all the Paranormal Activities, and at least the first two I really liked.
First two were really good. After that, not so much.
But, one of the reasons why the first two work really well is how quiet those movies are, especially the first one. And again, I think eerie quiet is greater than clanky loud terror every time. I was thinking about the structure of the movie, and I was thinking about like their as you call them, the individual fetch quests. When it comes to what happens to Richie, the idea of wrestling with your own sexuality and someone forcibly outing you in at a time in your life where you're not comfortable with that. I mean, that's legit. That got to me. That legitimately was frightening, but not because it was scary, but because psychologically that's terrifying. Imagine having a secret that you don't want the world to know about, and there's this possibility of it being drawn out of you. You don't have to have a scary clown for that. That by itself is bad enough. But then you have the thing with Beverly, and I didn't understand hers. It just seemed like a long setup to go oogie boogie woogie, and then we're on to the next thing. Eddie's made some degree of sense because they're still doing the hypochondria thing, and so he's still dealing with that particular insecurity and fear. So as long and drawn out and gross as that was, and got giant eye rolls for me, at least psychologically that made sense. Bill going back to the sewer grate, and carrying around all this guilt about his brother, all that made sense. The thing with Beverly made no sense to me.
Although I do give credit, that is kind of a mind fuck to, suddenly run out and realize that apartment building had been abandoned.
Yeah.
That was very surreal to just kind of realize, like, whoa, what were you walking around in?
Right.
Yeah, there's some of that stuff I wish they'd played around with a little bit more. And just to kind of mention something that Jason said, I'd like to reference another adaptation of a Stephen King movie with a naked woman that actually succeeds in scaring the crap out of you.
The Shining.
Thank you. One of those is done practically. One of them is done with badly realized CGI.
Okay, so this picture that you sent me, Alexis, looks like the gross alien things from the end of Howard the Duck.
Now you understand I said one in the flying name of Harryhausen is this shit.
I thought it was a picture from Joe's apartment.
Could have been that too.
Oh my god, I haven't thought of that movie in years. No, gentlemen, that is the form that it takes in the end of the 1990 miniseries.
Terrific.
Yep. It's terrible.
That is supposed to be the closest. I don't know. Okay, they keep saying that it's that the humans cannot see what it really is, that their primitive minds cannot comprehend what it truly is, and that's why they always see it as other things. So I don't understand in the 1990 series if we're saying that is actually what it does look like when it's not taking forms, or if that is the closest thing that their human minds can comprehend it as. But regardless, it looks like
I'm happy to explain what's actually going on there when we get back to me, because again, I'm gonna do a fair bit of compare and contrast between the novel and the movie, and a significant chunk of this is going to wind up being why in both versions of this, the kid stuff is more compelling than the adult stuff. And again, there's a few very specific reasons for this, some of which has to do with that, but I will get into that a little bit when it's my turn.
We'll give you a few minutes to go get your soapbox.
By the way,
not going to complain about that.
They utterly wasted
but you're going to get on a soapbox.
I'm going to try not to.
They utterly wasted the Bowers character, by the way. The idea of a crazed lunatic running around with a knife could have been handled in a really interesting way, but he disappears for large parts of the movie, and they kind of use him when they don't want to use Pennywise. They use him in the same capacity, and I'm like, this is dumb. Jason, what were your thoughts?
Personally, I really liked part one significantly better. This, to me, it was just, I guess the part one set such a high bar that I went into this expecting a lot more than what I got. The flashback scenes were definitely my favorite part. Yeah, there was a couple of jump scares, and the scene under the bleachers was really creepy and unsettling because, he played on the girl's fear of being accepted. So, just about anybody can relate to that they have some self-worth issues that, if exploited, then, they're going to kind of not really feel good about themselves and it can be exploited and make them vulnerable. And then you get your head eaten by a clown. But the only adult stuff I liked was the Bill Hader stuff.
Yeah.
Everything else just like kind of fell flat to me. And like if you removed him from the adult stuff of the movie, it takes a sharp downward turn. He wasn't a big focal point, but he kind of was the glue that held everything together, and kind of, at least for me, that kind of transitioned through the movie and kept my interest.
I was going to say, he has the most interesting arc out of all the adults.
It's been said in nearly every review, but it is accurate. Bill Hader was all of the adult actors that I thought were really genuinely good in this. I can't point to one person and say, oh, God, they really phoned it in. But Bill Hader, a Saturday Night Live, alumni who's known for his comedic work, he blew me away with how good he was in this.
Yeah, he's pretty amazing in this. I mean, James McAvoy has all these killer roles, but I kind of think he was very blah in this. Go ahead, Jason. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I mean, to see him take on he was supposed to be the comic relief, but to see his arc and to see him play like a really serious aspect of that was amazing. And like I said, I mean, he is what made the movie for me outside of the flashbacks of the kids. Like you guys already touched on, the Beverly stuff did nothing for me. I actually got my wife to come watch it with me, and she is totally against horror movies. The original It scarred her for life. It took me spending $100 on Sims games for her to even agree to this, and then for her to look at me and go, yeah, it didn't even creep me out. The first one creeped me out. This didn't even. She said I was laughing at parts in this, and I was like, well, yeah, you're right. It was more comical than it was unsettling and scary. I mean, you had a couple of jump scares, which you expect.
Wait, Jason, you bribed your wife with video games to go see this?
Yes.
Okay, I wanted to make sure we heard you correctly.
Yes, my wife has a addiction to Sims, and I had to spend $100 to buy her expansion packs and stuff for her to agree to see a horror movie. And then she looked at me and was like, "This wasn't even scary. It didn't even unsettle me." She said, "Now the original," she was like, gave me nightmares, and she's like, "I watched it in the middle of the day." She's like, part one kind of creeped me out. She said, "This was laughable, in my opinion." And coming from my wife, that says a lot, because she's scared of her own shadow most days. But getting back on the subject, I know it's surprising when I do that. It's the end of it really took me out of it. The whole "you're nothing but a clown" thing just kind of like, does that mean bullying is okay as long as it's an evil entity dressed up as a clown?
I just was bored by the concept of, didn't we already do this in the first movie?
Yeah, I mean, it was like it just basically rehashed everything. It was like, and then it just it shrank to like just a face in a bubble, like goo.
Yeah, I was kind of excited to see it turning back into an alien. Maybe get back on the ship. I don't know, do something interesting, and then it's just like it turned into what it turned into, and I'm like, wait a minute, you told me it was an alien.
Yeah, it was like, did somebody just melt some marshmallows down here and that was it? Did we reduce the offspring of a Stay Puft Marshmallow Man? I don't know. It really took me out of the end of it, which was kind of ironic. At least to me, when you go back and you see the movie that was being made, that the ending sucked, and then you get this, it's kind of meta to me. So I kind of laughed at that. The movie's great, but the ending sucks, just like this. The first part was great. The second part sucked. Not so much sucked, but it was a letdown for me. The CGI was horrible. The old lady was just, watching the trailer, I really expected a lot more out of that scene. And what we got was mildly disturbing and laughable. And the first thing I looked at my wife and said is, "I can't wait till Robert destroys this Tuesday." And she started laughing. She started laughing and went, "Oh, is he the one that doesn't like anything?" And I said, "Yeah." So at least our wife has listened to a couple of reviews that you've done, Robert, and she knows who you are.
You have represented me fairly. I appreciate it.
It's like, oh, he's the one that, and Mark's the one who loves everything, and Robert's the one that hates everything.
Well, I mean, one of us gets to set the schedule.
And what was funny is she was like, Alexis is my favorite because she just kind of is there, and she just plays the referee. She's like, she just plays referee between those two, and I was like, yeah, you've pretty much encompassed all four of us.
I want to chime in here on something that you mentioned because we brought up the Beverly scene a couple of times now. So Beverly's this character who's at a minimum being abused by her father. I think it's implied that it's sexual abuse. Maybe I'm wrong about that. Maybe the book goes into detail. I don't know. I didn't read the book.
It's in the book. It's been a while since I've read it, so I'm going off of memory. There is no sexual abuse of her by her father in the book.
He did beat her. I do know that.
Right.
He beat her senseless, but it wasn't sexual.
Okay.
Yeah, she got slapped around a lot, but there was nothing.
The movie definitely walks that line between physical and sexual and mental abuse. So it keeps you guessing, which does make it interesting.
In credit to the writing for that, because they do walk the line where it's creepy but not exploitative kind of thing.
No, absolutely. And then as an adult, as is often the case, she gets into the cycle of abuse where she marries an abusive man. So you would think that in her walk through the past and trying to get her token, they would deal with that. They dealt with Richie's closeted homosexuality. They dealt with Eddie's hypochondria. They dealt with Bill's guilt. They kind of, I guess, deal with Ben feeling isolated and bullied. I guess to one degree. Yeah, I now that I'm thinking about it, he does the bit with Beverly where she turns into the Human Torch. All right, fine.
Best version of the Human Torch on the screen yet.
Yep. But they don't do anything with Beverly. That whole scene. See, like, if it's one thing if we don't want to get back into the abuse thing with her for whatever the reasons are, but maybe let's use this as an opportunity to get some background on the entity that would eventually become Pennywise. And they touch on it, but not great, and it's confusing and muddled. So the whole scene just collapses for me. That right, Jason?
Yeah, I mean, if they would have just explored the aspect of the emotional abuse and everything, even just the emotional abuse, you didn't have to go into the implied sexual or even physical, just the emotional abuse. That she had some kind of reimagining of her father, which, it states that he passed away. Even if she had to confront him again, I think that would have been good.
It would have made more sense for her to think he's alive, and so she's interacting with him, but he's actually dead, and it's all a mind fuck from Pennywise.
It is a little harder to do because, Robert, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe the scene with the woman is almost taken exactly from the book. That Bev goes to the house, she sees the woman living there, they have tea, and things just start getting weirder and weirder, and until the woman basically she's basically Pennywise, and she scares Bev out.
Again, it's been a while since I've read. There's parts of the book I remember very clearly, some I don't, and this is, again, even by Stephen King standards, that's a long book. Okay. I don't remember specifically. It would not surprise me if that's what happened. I mean, here's the other thing about this, that in the book, it is only the clown one time. Pennywise the dancing clown shows up to eat Georgie's arm. It is never in that form again.
Makes sense.
They do that for the sake of having a consistent actor and a kind of a consistent antagonist for the adaptation into the movie, and I get it.
Yeah, I mean, you
not complaining about it at all.
But again, if the rules had been Freddy has very consistent rules. The xenomorphs have very consistent rules. They are a thing. This is what they do. They really don't stray from that. When you think about Pennywise, if it was, I can only live on the blood of children, and therefore I take the form of a clown because a clown will intrigue a child, and that will and then I can bait them in and eat them. I'm kind of with that premise. The problem is they never really establish that. It goes all over the fucking place. And so he can be anything at any time to anyone. Why does he keep being the... Now, I understand what you're saying, but what... If you can eat an adult, as he does at the beginning of this one, and you can eat a child, what fucking difference does it make? And now you've got too expansive of a definition of what this thing is. Go ahead, Jason.
What if they just updated it and, it was the clown while he was a kid and took a different form?
What, like a YouTube influencer?
Yeah. No, I mean, I'm serious. Like, if they just updated it and just became... He not only became, like, a centralized form, that he took a form in each one of their lives once they came back.
Right.
Like, expand on the memories. And also, I've got a serious question. We all went to junior high and high school. Did anybody else have a locker that damn big to fit 2 people in it?
No.
No.
I mean...
You had a top locker and a bottom locker sharing kind of the same parallel space.
I mean, I had the one vertical locker, but he was kind of a portly young kid. He had no problem fitting in that locker comfortably. I had issues with that.
It's a bit of a nitpick, sir. It's a bit of a nitpick.
No, I mean, it was like, I thought he went into Oscar the Grouch's garbage can for a second. I mean, I was waiting to, like, to have the whole Bugs Bunny layout, have a living room and everything in there. But, I mean, it was just stuff like that took me out of the movie. That, if he struggled to get in the locker, have that be, that tension build up. If they would have put this girl's on fire when Beverly burst into flames, that would have made it a little bit better. I know, bad joke. Hey, I gotta laugh. I gotta laugh out of Mark. That's all that matters.
No, she bursts into flames, and you just hear "Hot Blooded" by Foreigner. Hot blooded, check it and see. Got a fever. He's running down the hallway.
As opposed to that one with Eddie, where in the middle of getting spewed with all that black gun, all of a sudden an 80s song plays for like 2 seconds. What was that?
That was "Angel of the Morning." Yeah, but I think by the Pretenders.
That was hilarious.
I kept thinking of Deadpool when that happened, but
shame,
it was one of those things that, like, that scene kind of took me out too, because I mean the leper was good, but the costume and the stuff it looked horrible, and you're like,
because it's mostly CG rather than practical.
Yeah, I mean you could have done that same exact scene practically. And it came off looking 100 times better, because, I mean, the special effects artists nowadays are, like, beyond talented, beyond belief. So why, I don't know why they done CG in that aspect when it could have been done a lot better practical. And the fact that he just says, he's like, fuck it, I'm out, Mom. You're on your own. You're going to get impregnated by a zombie and a leper, and I'm cool with that. Hope my little brother makes it. It's like, it's just stuff like that just kind of took me out of the movie. And I don't know how to describe. I liked it, but like I said, I guess in my aspect, I set the bar too high going in, and therefore I was let down a lot more than what I should have been.
All right, Robert, it's your time. Everyone, sit down, get your popcorn, get a good stretch. And here's Robert to deliver the State of the Union.
I'm not sure if I want to be offended by that or not. All right. Look, the CGI in this movie is just generally not good. The sort of monster at the end that Pennywise turns into is probably the best looking thing, and even that's damning with faint praise.
Retarded looking.
A little bit, yeah. Again, the casting and the acting is what, to the extent that this movie is successful, that's what carries it. And I mean, Everybody kind of said their piece about Bill Hader, who does a tremendous job. For me, this kind of star was actually the guy who plays Eddie. There's that scene where they fade from child Eddie into old Eddie, or vice versa. I can't remember which one, and it's freaky how much they look alike. He does a tremendous job. So those two both do a good job. Sadly, the others are just kind of there, and again, they give Bill a little bit to do with still feeling guilty about the death of his brother. Ben doesn't get a whole lot to do, and let me say this about Beverly's arc as such. Hang on. That's why I said as such. Not really an arc. Okay, I'm not going to say that it is, but I lack a better descriptor off the top of my head. So let me.
Not even an arc. It ain't even like a little hump.
I thought we were supposed to sit down and shut up because Robert was talking.
Well, we don't listen.
Okay, look, it's more of an arc than Captain Marvel gets, so I'm calling it an arc. Okay.
And just for the sake of argument, Venom. Does everyone have bingo now? Go on.
I still need Eddie to interrupt before we get a full bingo.
We're getting close. All right. One of the things that both of these movies do is have an understanding of properly adapting material. What you can change, what you can't change, what you can change, and how it affects things further down the line, because nothing happens in a vacuum. So, by way of example, changing the setting from the 50s to the late 50s to the late 80s. Not a big deal. You're still able to evoke appropriate nostalgia. You can update a few of the visuals, but there's still enough of the same. There's a few major technological and social leaps that have not yet taken place to the point where you can still do a lot of the same stuff. Fair enough. So again, not a big deal. In this movie, making Richie gay. Richie's sexuality is an utter non-factor in the book. So, okay, sure. They decided to make him a closeted homosexual. Does it add a whole lot to the story? Your mileage will vary, but it's a perfectly acceptable thing to play around with if you want to play around with it. Okay, fair enough. There's a couple of things that happen in the novel that they remove from here that I think played to its detriment, though I'm not and this is iffy because I'm not entirely sure how it would have played out, but these are changes that are made that then aren't appropriately realized as the story continues. There's a couple of things in particular. One is that Beverly's abusive jackwagon of a husband actually follows her to Derry. He does show up later in the story and attacks her. Bill's wife, Audra, is actually a character. Their marriage is actually okay. She shows up in Derry worried about her husband. Actually, it manipulates Beverly's husband into abducting Audra and taking them down to its lair, where it shows both of them the deadlights. Audra goes comatose. Her husband's brains leak out of his eyes, ears, and nose.
Yeah.
That would have been a cool visual.
Yeah, it really would have. And some of this has to do with the nature of it, and I promise I'm getting to that in just a second. The reason that in both the 1990 made-for-TV movie and in this one that the children's side of the story is so much more compelling in many respects is that it's much easier to adapt. Because they do in both of in this and in the 1990 version just completely does away with the ritual of chud as a concept, which is fine. It's a weird thing. This one, they keep it, but in the original novel, the kids actually figure out the ritual and try to use that to destroy it. They don't actually do it. They hurt it, but they don't kill it. And they wind up coming back and doing it again, and they kill it the second time.
Well, doesn't the ritual involve them, like, biting on its tongue or something?
It's a metaphorical thing more than a literal thing. The ritual, they describe it in this movie as a contest of wills, which is true. It's described, because it's a Native American ritual, so this is more metaphorical language. It's described as biting each other's tongues and then trying to make each other laugh. You make faces until somebody smiles and breaks contact, and whoever breaks first loses. Now, again, it's not a literal thing in this instance, and the whole thing with the spiders, it is not just a alien in the original. It's actually transdimensional. And the truest representation of its form that it can take on Earth in this reality is that of a spider. It's just the closest approximation. What the deadlights represent are actually its true form. And that's what it's showing people when it shows them that. And Audra's actually like the only person who's ever seen the deadlights and didn't immediately expire or become irrevocably insane. She goes catatonic, and Bill actually winds up... He takes her catatonic body for a ride on Silver, his childhood bicycle, and uses the last magic from his childhood to kind of bring her back to reality. It's a thing, and again, it's Stephen King. I mean, come on, some of this is context that is lost to me trying to summarize it. So,
it's also called in the 1990 miniseries, "We Need a Happy Ending, Quick, let's throw this in."
Well, again, that's in the book. Like, this actually does have a happy ending.
Yeah, I know, but when you put it on film, you can't help but look and you go, "Really?"
Well, here's the other thing another minor thing that they changed. The kind of melancholic bite to the book is that after they leave again, they forget. Again. Like, they start forgetting as they're present. There's actually bits of correspondence between Mike and Bill that are represented. That is, Mike trying to help Bill figure out what he can do for Audra, but he's forgetting stuff. Again, and this is the guy who's lived in Derry, who's been there the whole time. He goes on a little bit about how I don't remember the year in particular. I can't remember if Ben was fat or if he had a clubbed foot. And they all forget each other again. And that's the melancholic part, rather than... I mean, not that Eddie dying isn't sad in and of itself. It is. But there is that kind of bittersweet moment to it. Okay, fair enough. So there is that part to it as well that is lost here by having them remember everything.
Can I ask you a question? Like, in all seriousness?
By all means.
Has Stephen King discussed, like, what the point of it is? Like, what is he saying about the nature of man and existence, and what philosophy is he espousing? What is the point?
I don't think he's ever discussed that in great detail.
Okay.
If I were to hazard a guess, and this is based on my reading of the book, my seeing the adaptations, and just kind of trying to read more into the philosophy or metaphor of the material being presented. This is purely interpretive and speculative on my part. Could be entirely wrong. This seems like a relatively long-form dissertation on the nature of unaddressed childhood trauma.
Okay. That makes sense to me. That jives.
Okay, that's my guess.
But my main question is, was King high out of his mind when he wrote this or not?
Well, I think that goes without saying.
Actually, I don't think he was.
Well,
this is very early in his
part in the book. There's a part in the book
that
was left
about
in the
that
movie.
part in the book.
Yeah, I'm just saying that.
We know what part you're talking about, and we're not going to bring it up. Everyone has talked about that.
Oh, is this
hold on.
Is this the kid orgy?
That goes to support the whole childhood trauma theory that Robert presented. If you wanted, And I think that that's a reason why he hasn't come out and said it, because of that particular part of the book that everybody kind of freaks out about. Naturally, they would.
I mean, believe it or not, it makes sense within the context of that part of the story. Like, it's not even, I mean, I read it, it's not graphic in the traditional sense of graphic sex scenes, and it's not exploitative.
I mean, it's not like the porno Sleeping Beauty book that the Interview with the Vampire Lady wrote.
That is correct.
That's good.
Moving on.
Oh, you guys don't know about that?
I am aware of its existence. Leave it at that.
I was asking Jason and Alexa. I know you acknowledged it. I know you know what it is.
I've heard of it, but not in a lot of detail.
Oh, I've read that series 3 times. It's so good.
You are the worst.
That doesn't surprise me.
Yes. Google Smutty Sleeping Beauty. It's fantastic.
No, I don't want to. That'll get me on some list somewhere.
Let me tell you about the 3rd book.
Okay,
No.
Mark,
You're disgusting.
Mark, I've seen enough fans of
boy.
Sleeping Beauty and Snow White and revealing clothing, okay? You would not believe how much of that crap I see at regular Comic-Cons. I don't need more of that in my life.
Mark has not yet actually been introduced to the full depth and breadth of Rule 34.
I feel like if I have to watch the Babadook, you guys should read the Smutty Sleeping Beauty books.
Mark, I have ethical objections to that.
So you've never actually read them, Robert? You just know they exist?
I am aware of their existence.
I think on the next Damn You Hollywood, we should do like a source material thing. We should all read the book and talk about them.
I have reviewed Rob Liefeld books. I have had enough of that crap.
Thank you. I'm just going to go out on a minor limb here. If I want to find smut related to fairy tales, I can find infinitely better than Anne Rice.
All right. So I kind of pulled you off what you were saying because you said what I needed you to say. So now finish what you were saying.
Okay. And so my point there is, circle back to it. The kids stuff is straightforward to adapt because all you have to do is alter the nature of their confrontation with Pennywise, with it, and you have a straightforward, like, scary bent to it, but a relatively straightforward horror-themed coming-of-age story. The stuff with the adults is much, much different and much more difficult to really get your head around. I think it's part of the reason the novel is structured the way it is. The novel is not split down the middle. The novel phases in and out between contemporary and flashback. It works quite well, actually. And I think part of the reason it's structured that way is so that Stephen King doesn't have to deal as much with the adults in any sort of straightforward capacity that way, because it is inherently more difficult to deal with. The kid stuff is more compelling and easier to tell. So this one having to deal almost exclusively with the adults, they used flashbacks to kind of pad out the runtime. They altered a few things, but some of it, again, I don't know that they made the best decisions all the way around. I much as I kind of rolled my eyes when I read about in the novel about Beverly's husband tracking her down, because of course we have to deal with we're going to deal with this now to kind of pad things out. But if you're breaking this up into 2 movies and you want to add some more runtime, yeah, he shows back up. That's not the worst way to go about this, as opposed to him just screaming from the top of their staircase.
Right.
There's, again, the Richie stuff that they added, which I think they did to both kind of play around with and give them something to do, I'm okay with. Again, that's fine. I have no objection to it. The other thing, there's a couple of other things. Again, they altered Mike a little bit in various points. I mean, Mike's actually not at the final confrontation with it as adults, because when Henry attacks him, he carves him up pretty good. He survives, but he's in the but like, it's a great bit actually when he's bleeding out on like the library floor and they're helping him stabilize, and he says, "You've got to go now. You have to do this now. Like, no, we got to make sure you get, because Henry still dies. Like, we got to make sure you're okay. Like, I've got pressure. The ambulance is coming. You have to go, because if the cops get involved with this, you're not going to survive because of how it interacts with adults. Just bad stuff will happen. It'll find a way. This is your chance. You have to go now. And again, I don't hate that they changed that. I don't mind Mike showing up and being part of the final confrontation. He's had to deal with this thing more than some of the rest of them in many respects. But they never really get a handle on, again, how to properly deal with all of the disparate elements of the adults being back in town. They lean too heavily on CGI in places where I would much have preferred them go practical. I mean, if what comes charging out of the darkness in that apartment that Beverly's seated in is that actual actress, but in, makeup to make her look rotted instead of a CGI'd 8-foot monstrosity, I think it's more effective. Maybe just me, but I think various iterations of that same kind of interaction have generally fallen on my side of the argument rather than the other. I want to say it's really not fair that Bill Skarsgård can be that creepy that effortlessly. I mean,
what did you guys think of that scene? It's part of Bev's quote-unquote arc where we see Pennywise putting the makeup on while he's talking to her.
Again, I felt like it was a missed opportunity to really get into, how we got from Alien to the man that he apparently inhabits. That is this, that is this clown from yesterday.
If I may very briefly again. The way that it interacts with children is to appear to them as these horrifying things. Because that's what scares kids. It doesn't actually do that with most adults. The way there's actually a deeply affecting and disturbing sequence in the novel that they left out here. It's another example of what happens when it is awake and active. And what it does to adults is less show up and scare them and more influence them to give in to the worst side of themselves. Is this supposed to explain about the explosion with the Easter eggs and everything? Yeah, kind of. Again, it's a slightly disturbed individual who gets manipulated without knowing it by this entity into doing something horrible. The people, there's spikes in just generalized violent crime when it is active. The people who, assault the gay couple at the beginning, it's somewhat intimated that if it is not awake and active within the world, that never happens. Like, sure, they're still not happy about the existence of the gays, but they probably don't accost them on the bridge and actually engage in violence. And so seeing a bit of a flashback to that, and it does this because adults, and this is referenced a little bit when it comes to the nature of dairy, the adults don't want to see this stuff. They don't understand the existence of this creature, and so they are willingly blinded to the reality of it until something terrible happens that they can point the finger at a human being and say, oh, well, this was just this person. So, kind of like how in the book Henry Bowers took the blame not just for his father, but for all of the kids and all the missing kids. A lot of the missing kids, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, there's that. And again, there's a lot of examples that don't get gone into in any of the visual adaptations because one or two is enough to convey the point that when it is active, more bad things happen. So there's a lot of that there. So there's that, and you could have easily shown again this poor immigrant guy joining the circus, working hard, and just kind of as he's struggling to really make something of himself, constantly being whispered to and struggling with the dark impulses within himself, and then after he snaps, kills people, takes his own life, which I assume would be the general course of that. Pennywise, just it as a creature kind of going, kids like clowns. Maybe I'll revisit this. It's kind of fun.
I would have liked to have actually seen that on screen.
I would have as well. Again, there's a fair number of missed opportunities within Part 2 that are related, that kind of go with that.
That's my biggest struggle with this movie, is that, again, as a studio, you look around at your IP, and, well, what's currently collecting dust and not making any money? And they go, okay, well, it's been a long time since we've done an It movie. People will go see scary clown movies. Let's go make that one. And then it becomes a success. It's like, well, we got to do the other part now. And it's like, this, to me, just felt like we just got to get it out. I mean, granted, It Chapter 2 was only 2 years ago.
Chapter 1.
Chapter 1 was only 2 years ago. And I don't think they intended at the time to do the second part. They just happened to have a phenomenon on the hand. They're like, well, let's rush this.
The way they ended the first part, they clearly, again, that was clearly a door they wanted to leave open.
Okay, but what I'm saying is this isn't the Avengers. They didn't shoot it back to back. They shot it, they marketed it, they put it in theaters, it was a hit, and they were like, oh good, there's more we can do here, we can make more money. And they rushed the second one into production to get it out as soon as possible. And I don't feel like a lot of care and time was really put into making the best movie possible. I think they went like the problem with the second movie is it's very surface level. It's a lot of it's everything that's kind of wrong with modern horror. It's we talk a lot on this show about mass appeal. This is very much a check the boxes mass appeal horror movie. So I guarantee you there's people listening to this going, I can't believe they've spent now an hour and a half dissecting this fucking clown movie. Because a lot of people
nobody still listened.
Oh no, they can't wait to hear our Rotten Tomatoes part. That's why we do it at the end.
Well, it's not surprising that they did throw the clown in more. Robert, you said in the books Pennywise and in the actual form of the clown only shows up once. But when you look at the 1990 film, they put Tim Curry in like crazy as the clown, because if you have Tim Curry, you are going to use Tim Curry. And people now associate it not with the books on, but with the Tim Curry form.
Right.
If we had gotten this movie and Pennywise the clown had only shown up in that first scene and never again, people would have been furious.
Yeah.
Because that's what they know the story for.
The argument would have been, it's a bad movie because there's no clown.
Yeah, and again, I'm fine with that. If that's the direction you go, you can easily tweak that to be what it's been for both adaptations. I'm okay with it. Again, I'm completely fine with that alteration for the sake of transitioning from novel to television or film.
But you know what kills me about this is that as many movies as you and I have reviewed, this was a giant missed opportunity to do something really interesting with the concept of child trauma and horror, and they don't. They just don't. It becomes people running from a monster.
Yeah, I definitely get the impression that they took a fair amount of time adapting the first half, and it got rushed in the second half. And
it totally got rushed. Robert, how long does it take to get a movie from script to screen? It takes a long time, longer than 2 years. And again, it's not even this thing came out in September of 2017. It's in theaters now. It's 2019. And it had a budget of only $80 million. They fucking hit the gas on this thing.
Yeah, and it's a real shame because the writers in particular, I said this about the first one, they have a really good understanding of how to adapt material from novel to screen. What to leave out, what to trim, what to accentuate, what to change, how those changes affect things down the line. This is, I think, one of the biggest dangers when people adapt material like this. They say, okay, the novel is 30 years old. Older than that, actually. How about we change a few things to make it more contemporary? Okay, what do you want to change? Well, we'll change it, B, C, and D. Okay, B, C, and D affect, Z, Y, and Q. No, we just want to change B, C, and D. Then you have to understand how it affects things all the way along the line. But we just want to change B, C, and D. Fine, do what you want to do. It's going to suck. And that's what happens a lot of the time with stuff like this. The first movie does not have that problem. It is well adapted. Believe it or not, I think this part of it, while there are a few missteps and a few missed opportunities, but it does kind of fundamentally get the underlying concepts that are meant to be explored here. It just doesn't really realize them to its fullest potential, which is a shame.
Well, it does so with certain characters.
Yeah. I feel like if this had another 8 months of working on the script, they might have hit a real home run with part 2.
I want to read you something real quick. On February 16th, 2016, producer Roy Lee, in an interview with Collider, mentioned the second film, remarking, Dauberman wrote the most recent draft working with Machete, so it's being envisioned as 2 movies. In July 19, 2017, Machete revealed that the plan is to get production underway for the sequel to It next spring. That's spring of 2018. Like, could this have been any more rushed?
Yes.
I'll admit I was also a little disappointed because Machete did a lot of interviews where he talked about how this film was going to be so scary that people were going to literally crap their pants or something. And again, there were a few decently good scares. Hell, I'll even admit a few of the jump scares got me. Yes, jump scares are cheap, but I've said it before, a well-done jump scare still can be effective and, still, freak you out. I even, freaked out a little bit with the balloon popping with, oh God, what was his name? Hofstadter's corpse under the bed.
Yeah, that was a good one.
Yeah, it's like, was that a jump scare? Yeah. Are jump scares lazy? Yeah. Did that still scare me? Yes.
Yeah, but I mean, like, if my wife walks out of the bedroom right now, if I'm really focused on my computer screen and she taps me on the shoulder, that's going to scare me too, briefly. But it will pass. It'll pass within seconds. I think that's where and then. I mean, maybe I'm being hypercritical, but I feel, and I'm so forgiving of a lot of stupid action movies. And this one, I'm like, nope.
Boy, are you.
You could have been so much better.
Well, no, hang on. Part of the reason you're so forgiving of dumb action movies like this is it couldn't. At no point in Hobbs and Shaw could you say, you know what, you could have been better.
Yeah.
No, you sucked. You were what you were. No sequel for you.
And I love you for it.
No, you don't.
But you're right, though. I think there's a lot of grist for the mill that went left on the cutting room floor, or in a draft that was torn away.
I also, and this is a bit of this is a comparison thing. They all just kind of are willing to re-engage with it as adults. Like, there's not really that "nah, screw this, I'm out" bit. If you want to add that to add more stuff for the adult actors to do, okay. I don't even really dislike that they're... what changes the mind is, we're going to die if we don't. We can leave this place, we can forget again, but it's still going to get us. But I think I need more than just Jessica Chastain saying that's what I saw when I was hypnotized. That's a perfectly acceptable internal / externality to drive things forward. But I needed all of them to kind of sit around and go, yeah, just these moments. I needed a scene where they all kind of do like the Alcoholics Anonymous thing, and they all go, yeah, I'm very successful financially, because all of them are. And this is a thing that got completely removed because it is actually contested by a different entity that is the essence of creation and life, whereas it is the essence of consumption and death. And you do get a bit of that duality. Yeah, Martin the Turtle. And the Turtle's influence, his touch in their lives, is actually what helps enable all of their successes. Again, the Turtle is completely ignored in the adaptation, and fair play if that's what you want to do. Okay, I get it. Trying to describe the relationship of cosmic entities manifesting themselves in this reality is a bridge too far. Fair play. But I did want that.
They weren't ready to. They weren't ready to go full Galactus.
Yeah. I need a moment when they all kind of sit around and go, yeah, okay, I need Ben. Like, I'm sure I'm financially successful. I'm a world-renowned architect who's profoundly alone and lonely, and I have no issue realizing that I'm just going to drink myself into a near coma and then wind up shooting myself in the head one night. And Bill's response being, yeah, I sell a lot of books, but everyone hates my endings. The adaptation struggle, my marriage is on the rocks, and I'm not entirely sure what my next job is going to be because I have to adapt this and change my ending, and I don't know how to, and I don't want to, and my life's, and I'm on the ragged edge. Followed by Richie going, I'm a stand-up comic. Do I have to say I'm not well adjusted? And then we get a bit of Eddie's life. Just I needed that bit when they all have a moment of self-realization, like, okay, I can absolutely see how this is going to end badly if we don't change the path we're on.
Okay, so you brought up Hobbs and Shaw. Here's the difference between what you're talking about and that, other than the obvious. The producers of Hobbs and Shaw went, the people who are seeing this movie, they want punching and quips and explosions and and really fast-paced action sequences, and they gave them that like in full. But I don't want to debate the Hobbs and Shaw movie. I'm just using that as an example of that movie was every bit of what it was meant to be. This movie struggles because you're dealing with an audience that says, get to the fucking clown already, versus what you're talking about, which would have actually made it a good movie. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do. And we talked about this a couple of episodes ago, how do you, the balance of art versus commercialism. It's a struggle. And it's a struggle that this movie, unfortunately, seems to come out on the losing end of.
Any last thoughts here before we move on to Podcoin and the money, or money in the Podcoin, or the money coin?
Again, this is a very well-acted movie to the extent that the actors really go out of their way to elevate the material they're given. I wish the script had more time to really kind of mature and develop and be refined. That said, I didn't hate this movie, and that's going to be a personal thing. Don't get me wrong, I agree with all the criticism we've levied at it. But if you enjoyed the first one, I think you will be able to enjoy this one despite it not being as good. And I hope that the writers in question in particular are able to get another Stephen King property to kind of work with, because they really do seem to have, again, if the first part is any indication, and even parts of this one, they've really got a handle on some of how to adapt Stephen King from page to screen, which is a very difficult thing.
Can I pitch you, I think, what should be the next Stephen King movie?
I already know what the next Stephen King adaptation is, but okay.
Besides Dr. Sleep.
I already know what the one after that is, too.
I think they should do Maximum Overdrive starring Larry the Cable Guy.
I want to hit you in the head with something very heavy and not stop.
Yeah, sorry, Mark, but I'm going to agree with Robert on this one.
I think I'm brilliant. All right, who wants to do the money?
You are the only one.
Actually, before we go to the money and the Podcoin, a little off topic, but this just popped up on my Twitter feed. Post from Patton Oswalt, who is apparently a huge Stephen King fan and has been a huge Stephen King fan for most of his life. Just got a copy of The Institute. I guess that's King's latest book.
It is.
And he is name dropped in the book. Apparently there's a character talking about how, it says, yeah, and Patton Oswalt's performing at so-and-so, and he's tweeted about it and how this is like the greatest honor he's ever gotten, and King actually retweeted saying the pleasure has been all mine for years now.
Well, that's very nice for Patton Oswalt. That man has had some great tragedies befall him and his family, and I've always enjoyed him as a comedian, so No harm, no foul there. Now I just need Patton Oswalt to get on board with my idea for Maximum Overdrive starring Larry the Cable Guy.
Ark, stop it.
And on that note, hey everybody, I really do hope you love the Raduiich Broadcasting Network. Did you know that you can actually get paid just for listening to this podcast? I know it sounds insane, but it's true. We just discovered this free new app called Podcoin, and it literally pays you to listen to podcasts. Here's how it works. You listen to podcasts, and you earn Podcoin while you listen. Then you turn that Podcoin in for gift cards at places like Amazon or Starbucks, or if you're a good person, you could even donate that Podcoin to charity. The more you listen, the more you earn. Here's what you do. Download the app right now on iPhone or Android, and I have a special code for you. Simply use our code MARKWED5. That's capital MARKWED 5. Capital MARKWED 5. MARKWED 5. And you'll get 300 Podcoin just for signing up. And if you listen to enough of us on there, you can get a cappuccino at Starbucks or an Amazon gift card on us. So go ahead and go listen to this podcast or virtually any podcast on Podcoin and sign up with code MARKWED5. I swear it'll change the way you listen to podcasts.
Here comes the money.
Here we go. Money talk.
Here comes the money. Money, 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 money.
Dollar, dollar. Dollar, dollar.
Alrighty, on a budget of roughly $60 to $80 million at the time of this recording, It Chapter 2 has earned $190.5 million. So it's already it's doing well. It's another win for Warner Brothers. We'll see how far it gets up the chain. If it gets anywhere near Universal and Disney in the top 10. First one did very, very well. We'll see what happens with this one. It won the weekend. It knocked Angel Has Fallen, which, believe it or not, had 2 weeks at the number one spot in the box office. Well, it got knocked to number 2.
Given the material that had been released over those 2 weeks, yeah, I can buy that.
Good Boys, which was also number 1 in its debut weekend, fell from 2 to 3. The Lion King... I've been thinking about that. Every time they mention how much money The Lion King has made, I was like, well, there it is, folks. That's where we are in the world right now. An exact copy of the animated original, which was reanimated with photorealistic CGI, is, I think, the second biggest earning movie in the world.
I just always imagine somebody coming out of a time machine or out of hypersleep into this era, and coming from like 94 when The Lion King first came out, and then popping on, the first thing they hear is Lion King's number 1 in the box office, and they're just freaking out, wondering what parallel universe they've accidentally popped into.
Yep. So Lion King fell from 3 to 4. Fast and Furious, Hobbs and Shaw, 4 to 5. It's inching its way up the top 10. You know,
Nope. I'm looking at it now. Hobbs & Shaw currently sitting at $721 million.
It's getting there.
It's not going to get there.
Overcomer stayed at number 6. Dora and the Lost City of Gold must have opened someplace new because it jumped from 11 to 7 somehow.
Yeah.
A third best Indiana Jones movie.
Not even close.
Ready
you
or
are
Not.
So far, not accurate. It's not even funny.
I'm not counting whatever silly game you're talking about.
Fine. I'm not entirely convinced it's better than Kingdom of the Crystal Skull.
You're a lunatic.
Guys, we do not need to open up that can of worms right now. That is something that we need a whole other podcast to do. Let's make that a Patreon exclusive.
On Trial, Kingdom of the Crystal Skulls. That'll be fantastic.
Oh, Lord.
Ready or Not.
It's not defensible on its own merits, but it's better than Dora.
Ready or Not dropped from 5 to 8. Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark dropped from 7 to 9. And Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, which for some inexplicable reason they're thinking about doing a Netflix miniseries, stayed at number 10. Rounding out the top 20 are The Peanut Butter Falcon, The Angry Boys movie, Angry Boys. Spider-Man Far From Home. Brittany Runs a Marathon. Nija. Annabelle Comes Home. Don't Let Go. 47 Meters Down. And something called Shitshore. And I guess Toy Story 4, which is at number 20. So our yearly stats, we haven't done this in a while. We'll tell you where things have landed worldwide. Obviously, nothing's getting, other than Star Wars, maybe, nothing's getting the $2 billion, almost 3. So Avengers,
Star Wars is
always at number 1. The Lion King has passed Captain Marvel and is now the second most highest earning movie this year.
All hail the mouse.
I am torn on that because they're both terrible movies.
Captain Marvel is number 3. Spider-Man, now the sole property of Sony.
Boy, I sure hope we all get to look forward to Spider-Man interacting with Tom Hardy's version of Venom.
And don't forget Morbius and Black Cat and Silver Sable.
Hang on, Morbius is not going to be a thing.
Jesus Christ.
No. I mean this. That's going
to... It's being made with that Gambit movie.
No, Morbius has a better chance of actually becoming a real thing. It's going to bomb so hard. No, that's such a bad idea. Like, hey, Jared Leto, wasn't he good in something? No, not really.
He was good in, oh God, what was that? The Dallas Buyers Club, the one he got the Oscar for?
I'll take your word for it. I haven't seen that movie.
It's a good movie. It is.
I've heard good things about it, but he's getting a lot of leverage out of one role. I'm just going to put it like that. I've seen some of his other stuff.
4 is at number 5. Aladdin, number 6. Hobbs and Shaw, as Robert mentioned before, is the only movie the second movie from Universal in the top 10 at $721 million. That only number 7 because of the dominance of yield Disney.
Well, not only that, but for the record, remember we talked about this. Hobbs and Shaw needs $1 billion to really be profitable, and it's not there yet.
Well, let's see if it earns more than Aladdin, which is currently sitting at $1,046,000. The Wandering Earth, Nija, and then finally How to Train Your Dragon, The Hidden World at number 10. It's funny. I was reading an article, I think it was in Variety, or it was either Variety or Fortune, probably Fortune, that just talked about, like, if you weren't a Disney film, then the summer season for movies was pretty dismal this year. I mean, it isn't quite the cinemapocalypse that was, I think, either 2014 or 2016, where like everything bombed and like people were proclaiming the end of the theaters. It was that bad. That was the year of the second Alice in Wonderland movie and the second Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I think World of Warcraft, which was only successful because of China. Was that 14, Robert?
I think so, maybe. Hang on.
Well, tell the haters they could go see The Fanatic. It only made $3,000. Tell me you guys have heard about that movie.
No, 14 did okay. 14 had Transformers, Third Hobbit movie, Maleficent, X-Men Days of Future Past, Winter Soldier.
Then I'm thinking of 16.
Let me check 16. 16 had Civil... No, okay, 16 had a lot of Disney movies, but I think 16 was okay. That had Civil War, Rogue One, Finding Dory, Utopia, Jungle Book, Secret Life of Pets, Dawn of Justice, Fantastic Beasts.
All right, I'm looking it up now on the box office bomb chart.
There's actually 2016 was just a rough year in general for the economy. It wasn't just movies in general. That was a rough year.
Yeah.
Well, then I hate to say it. I think election years in general, the economy usually goes down a little bit. People are skittish about what direction the government's going to be going. They're not sure if they should be spending their money or not.
Yeah, it's an odd trend that we've developed. Like, if the economy's bad going into an election year, it's going to be bad. The president's not going to get reelected historically. If it's good, the president is going to get reelected historically.
All right, so the year that I'm thinking of...
16 did have Warcraft, Kung Fu Panda 3.
Yeah, okay, no, it's 16 that was the cinemapocalypse. Alice Through the... So these are all the movies that bombed in 2016. Are you ready? This is on the Wikipedia list of box office bombs, and I think this had the most in a single year. Alice Through the Looking Glass, Allied, Ben-Hur, the BFG, Deepwater Horizon, The Finest Hours, Ghostbusters, Gods of Egypt, The Great Wall, The Huntsman's Winter War, Live by Night, Monster Trucks, which was like that was a big like more people read the story about how bad that movie was and how much it was a big write-off for that company than actually saw the movie. The Promise, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2, and that's it. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14.
Okay, just a thought. Don't make bad movies.
Here's another thought. If I may quote John Lovitz, if the movie stinks, just don't go.
They
Boy,
didn't. That's the problem.
No. That's a good thing.
Well, that's my
That's
point.
what managed to do Battleship. No, seriously. Battleship was the lesson we all learned where we finally woke up. All the critics said, no, we're not even going to say this is so bad it's good. We need to send a message to Hollywood. Don't see this movie.
13, 14. Yeah, 14. I don't think there's been another year in recent history where there were this many bombs in one year. Hence the name Cinemapocalypse.
Yeah, a lot of studios invested a lot of money making terrible movies that people realized were terrible and didn't go see.
There's only one so far this year on the list, and it's Dark Phoenix. Who'd have thunk it?
Which is a movie so bad. That movie was not only so bad, but such a giant failure, it actually depressed the value of Disney stock despite the year they're having.
That's a movie that we reviewed and I think we're still recovering from.
2018 had 1, 2, 3, 4. Only 4. So 2018 was a good year. 2017 had quite a number, but not as many as 2016. It had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So, just some interesting stats and statistics there. Next week, look at the release schedule. We're not doing anything next week. This coming Friday, the only thing coming out is Goldfinch and the Hustlers, or rather Hustlers, which apparently is getting rave reviews. I can't imagine a tremendous amount of people show up to the movies this weekend, so I'm sure It Chapter 2 is the number one movie of the weekend coming up this week. The weekend after that, with this we will be reviewing Rambo: Last Blood, but in competition with that is Downtown Abbey and Ad Astra. I don't think Ad Astra gets a lot of people out to the theaters. It's going to be a lot.
Can I just say, I read the dumbest thing related to Ad Astra.
What's that?
Like, this is the last chance for, how was it phrased? Like, original science fiction in American cinema.
You're out of your fucking mind.
No, that's the point. All Ad Astra has done is rip off like 4 other sci-fi movies.
Yeah. So the whole point of me bringing up when I bring this stuff up is, how does it do in the coming weeks compared to the other movies coming out? And I think until Joker comes out, which is October 4th, I think it kind of has free run in the theaters. Like, Rambo: Last Blood will get, the old men out that want to go see good old Sylvester Stallone kicking ass. Downton Abbey will get people like
Your
my wife out, and no one's going to see Ad Astra unless you're really into the NASA program.
Hey,
Are we reviewing the Joker?
I am offended by that. I will probably be seeing Ad Astra.
Okay, so only nerds like Robert will be going to see Ad Astra. That's not. But none of these things are cutting into It Chapter 2. Certainly not Hustlers and Goldfinch. So, like I said, and then the following weekend after that, the only thing that's going to be in mass and wide-scale theaters is Abominable, which is a Universal animated picture. And then the Joker is the 4th. You had a question, Alexis?
Oh, I just asked if we're going to review Joker.
Of course. I got a whole week dedicated to it.
Much to my consternation, yes.
Hey, look, I'm skipping Gemini Man because no matter how many times I show that trailer, it looks terrible.
Wow, we finally found what it takes for Mark to say a movie's terrible. 2 Will Smiths.
Yep. Was too many. All right. Unless anyone has any major points they want to bring up regarding movie finance, I believe it is time.
Are you ready? No! I said, are you ready?
No, God! No, God, please, no! 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 No!
All right, Alexis, am I reading new people or am I reading the old hat? You know, the all the members of the Raduiich Broadcasting Critics baseball team.
How about 50-50?
50-50. Okay. I will do my
Wow.
best.
Someone's seriously asking if Joker should have a PG version for Rotten Tomatoes critics.
That person needs to be punched in the
What?
throat.
You're the same. You're as bad as those morons saying, "Hey, Deadpool should have a PG-13 cut." Look, Deadpool sucks. Don't cut. I would have preferred a PG-13 cut because I could have gone to the bathroom, missed the whole thing, and just walked out of the theater and demanded my money back.
Jackie K. Cooper of JackieCooper.com. Give it to me.
Self-employed loser.
Thank you. Went to it too, wanting to be scared silly. They left out the scared and went for the silly. Too much time clowning around and not with, in capital letters, the clown.
Oh, somebody's trying
Can we
to be cute.
And failing miserably.
Can we arrange a blanket party for this person?
Andy Lee of Daily Star UK. As these set pieces could be put in any order, the film feels more like a series of randomly assembled shorts than a coherent film.
No. Again, parts through the middle might be a little disjointed, which, fair play. That doesn't mean the movie as a whole is that disjointed, because I get the feeling you're just not paying attention, buddy.
Yeah, I think they just didn't like the side quests.
I mean, no one does, but...
Carl Delos Santos of Smash Cut Reviews. Clearly, Machete had a long list of things he wanted to do and tackle in It Chapter 2, and he did all of it. Unfortunately, the movie didn't need most of it.
Yeah, that's not... Again, like we talked a little bit about this. There's a lot that goes on, but this is an unrefined final product, and I think that's kind of what this guy is inelegantly trying to say.
So you guys genuinely believe if it had come out in Chapter 2 had come out in 2020, it would have been a much better movie?
I think it would have been a more refined movie. I don't know about better. I think it would have lacked a lot of the disjointed parts, and maybe they could have actually explored things that made this 3 hours.
They gave Zack Snyder an extra year to do Batman v Superman. This could have used that. Allison, this one's for you, Alexis. I picked it just for you. This is my gift to you. Are you ready?
Oh yeah.
A little less enthusiastic. You're hurting my ears.
Look, Mark's anniversary gift. This is going to be bad.
Sorry. I didn't mean to say that loudly. I'm sorry. Did I move my microphone too close?
Alison Rowett, The Herald, Scotland. A Rocky Horror Show indeed.
Eddie, I want you to find this person and go bite them.
Look, I don't know if you all saw a bit of that like meme that was going around a little bit ago about there's, so many million of whatever animal in the world versus however many million people in whatever country. So if all of these creatures decided to invade, each individual member of this country would have to kill so many of these creatures. And I'm not sure we're up for it, kind of thing. The one about Scotland was there's 111 million cats or so in the world, and only like 30 million Scots. So if all the cats in the world wanted to invade Scotland, each Scot would have to kill, 12 cats or something like that. And I'm not sure we're up for it. I haven't asked Stuart Lang to comment on the accuracy of that, but after that review, I'm starting to think that's even more one-sided than it sounds on paper.
This is a long way to go for that joke, buddy.
It was worth it.
I fucking Mr. Toad's Wild Ride. Alex
It's not a thing anymore.
Savalev, film threat. Sadly, though afforded double the budget, It Chapter 2 provides half of the scares of the first installment. This clown's makeup is wearing off fast.
Wow. Gonna stretch that metaphor anymore, buddy?
Seriously, can we stop? Can we just get some critics who quit trying to be so catchy? I mean, for God's sakes, there's already one Gene Shalit, and we don't need more.
That is correct.
Oggs Cruz of Rappler, whatever that is. It Chapter 2 is comparably a lot less focused and vastly more distracted effort, with Machete clearly having difficulties in cohering all of his film's scary parts to tackle his daring take on trauma.
Is that even a word?
I think it's cohering.
Okay.
I'm still questioning whether or not that's a word.
Yeah, I'm not convinced it is.
I mean, again, I know what they're trying to do. They're trying to turn coherence into a verb, but
Hang
I'm
on.
not sure it is.
I'm Googling. Hang on.
While you're Googling, I'm Matt Brunsoning of Creative Loafing.
Oh, no.
Okay, no, it's not. Coherence is, let's see here, it's like state of being, oh wait, cohering is a word. Hang on. Cohered, cohering, to hold together firmly as parts of the same mass. It is a word.
Oh, okay. Good for him. Matt Brunson of Creative Loafing. When you've seen one toothy, slobbering demon, you've seen them all. The fact that one has spider legs while another sports saggy breasts, while yet another has a generous Gene Simmons and Kiss tongue, ultimately doesn't make any difference.
Could I throat punch this person?
I wish someone would have punched Matt Brunson a long time ago. He is the punchiest.
I mean, look, I understand your love life might be letting you down for right now, Matt Brunson. And if you're finding that the shallow nature of your existence in actively seeking out slobbering demon mouths for whatever you want to do with them, okay, fine, I'm not going to kink shame you. But, no, that's not a fair comparison. I'm not entirely sure it's even an accurate criticism. Again, there's problems with this movie, but I'm really not entirely certain that repetition of visual is one of them. Repetition of narrative beats, yes. Repetition of visuals, maybe not so much.
I was just going to say Bill Skarsgård's drooling issue is not a problem in this movie. In fact, I actually think it added a little bit to the overall look of the monster.
Completely agreed. Again, Bill Skarsgård is almost effortlessly creepy as Pennywise. The fact that he can do that with his eyes is still unsettling to me.
Oh, I know you guys aren't huge fans of Stephen Colbert, but Skarsgård was on the other night, and there's actually a segment where he teaches Colbert how to do the Pennywise smile, and it is freaky as hell. You guys should go find that on YouTube.
I might.
I like Colbert. He's fine. I don't need to watch his late night show, but I liked him on the Daily Show.
He benefited from writers.
They all benefit from writers.
Well, okay, he benefited disproportionately from writers who have abandoned that poor schlub who's taken it over.
Noah Berlatsky of NBC News, think in all capital letters. Think. It, that generic title, demonstrates that in pop culture there is always a second chapter. There's no such thing as just one evil clown.
They are aware that there was more in the book, right? This wasn't an tacked-on sequel just for money.
No, this man has never actually read a book in his life. That is such a bizarrely bordering on the inane observation about this property.
Well, speaking of inane, Ed Whitfield of the Ooh Tray.
Oh.
Ooh.
I hate him just because he makes you make that sound.
Ooh. The second half of the story plays like a bland retelling of the first.
Okay, that's fairly accurate. That said, there's a reason I believe that the novel was structured the way it was to kind of move between the contemporary and the flashbacks. And if they tried to tell that story in movie format, it's a 5-hour movie. I get it.
It's either a 5-hour movie or it's a film where we all want to just bash our brains in from the pacing whiplash.
Yeah. Yeah, it either takes a long time to get places, or it makes the storytelling pace in the Fast and the Furious franchise look tame.
The truth is, if you read most of Stephen King's books and that have flashbacks, and yeah, he uses that J.J. Abrams uses lens flares. You can't keep doing that with his films. I don't know if you guys saw the Shining miniseries that they aired.
I think I did, like the one that King kind of had a hand in because he still wasn't all that happy with Kubrick's version.
Yeah, the one where he basically said, "Just make it accurate to my book." There is all the flashbacks, and again, it destroys the pacing because King, when he writes, a character will just go into a flashback at random moments. And it works in the book, but you can't have that happen in a film because someone's in the middle of doing something and all of a sudden, flashback. It comes out of nowhere and it makes no sense from a visual perspective. You can't film like that and expect people to stay interested.
Yeah.
This is actually a fresh review, but it's so bad. Sarah Slazek of the MacGuffin. Pennywise now carries with him a partially deflated balloon. She got paid to write that sentence.
Wow.
That is the stupidest thing I think I have ever heard.
I don't even know how to reply to that.
It doesn't make it... Is she talking about how he looks like a partially deflated balloon at the end? Because he did kind of look like a partially deflated balloon. But...
Which would have been cool if they actually had deflated a red balloon and then just painted over it to get that effect.
Now, hang on, because let's compare and contrast here. So he now carries around a partially deflated balloon. But Ray Pride of New City says, grown Goonies in the boonies.
The fuck?
I was about to say it. Thank you for saving me.
That sounds like it came out of Bloom County.
No, Bloom County the writer for that would have looked at it and went, you know what? I don't think so. And would have retired it.
Is this guy just not aware that Stephen King pretty much invented those tropes?
Apparently not.
I think we're starting to lose Jason here, so I'll get to the end of this.
Yeah, 5 a.m.'s coming real close.
All right. Oh, okay. One of our favorites here, one of our foreign friends, Rashid Irani of the Hindustan Times, Robert. Easy, buddy.
Nice Selma Bouvier impersonation.
Bill Skarsgård is dreadful rather than
Shut up!
Rather than dread-inducing. And even
that is so profoundly inaccurate.
I'm not done.
I don't care.
Rashid Irani of the Hindustan Times, Robert. Bill Skarsgård is dreadful rather than dread-inducing. And even scarier than the nearly 3-hour runtime of this frightmare.
I think listening to that, you just gave Robert an aneurysm.
That is what he tries to do every week.
Don't they have some positional prayer to do? They're overriding this nonsense.
I don't know.
Look,
I don't know how merciful God will be to this person after that review when standing before the seat of judgment. But man, that is bad.
And again, I think we covered this. No one in this movie gives a bad performance. These were all great actors, and they all did phenomenally well.
Ryan Syrek of The Reader of Omaha, Nebraska.
Ironic for a man who's never read a book.
It, too, at least there's no sewer orgy, is a start-to-finish misfire. From its insensitive opening to an ending that would make Peter Jackson give the wrap-it-up signal.
Okay, two things. The notion that the opening being insensitive, in this instance the gay couple being assaulted, that's literally in the book. And I'm sorry, but if you're an extra-dimensional, shape-shifting horror monstrosity who devours people and preys on the worst of their instincts, sensitivity's not exactly high on your priority list. But hey, I'd rather my monsters fit into my sanitized version of reality.
Don't you realize that murderous alien clowns need to be PC2, Robert?
Yeah,
So does that kind of our weekly woke review?
Yeah, hashtag woke clown.
Was it you, Mark? Hang on. Was it you who posted the review about killer alien clown not being the ally we thought he was?
No, but that's hysterical.
I don't know where I saw it, but I saw that. It's not a joke. Someone said, "Oh man, the clown in it is shockingly anti-queer."
No, that was me. I believe that was me, as a matter of fact.
You found that.
I had to share it with the world. Ashley Lamberto of CultureVulture.net. I'm sorry to pop your balloon, Alexis, but It Chapter 2 is a mess.
I should have kept my mouth shut.
Okay. I'm going to hop in here while I'm still coherent. These people get paid for this shit.
Yes, Jason, they do.
Let's just write down where these people, and because we're obviously doing their job 10 times better than what they ever have. Let's cash in on this because they're absolutely dumb fucks, and I mean at least we have Robert.
Thank you for that, I guess.
The Raduiich and Broadcasting Network. At least we have Robert. Let's see. Roger Moore, Rob's spiritual father, speaking of which.
Oh, God.
Tribune News Service. How's that old saying about too much of a mediocre thing go again?
I don't know. What's your last paycheck look like?
Da-da-da-da-da-da.
I mean, look, I could have said you could ask your wife, or your ex-wife, rather.
Arrgh.
Those alimony payments treat me.
Well, in his case, too much of a good thing would be oxygen, because he needs to die soon.
You know what? I saw. This is unrelated, but I saw someone post just kind of a jokey thing about that scene from the Last Jedi when Leia is ejected into space and survives. It was one of those like quasi sarcastic things about they actually had to film this thing indoors due to the actress's crippling addiction to oxygen. I have a friend who then posted the appropriate response, and a few years later she would overcome that addiction. I laughed more than I should have.
All right, this is the last one, and it's going to be a fresh review. Are you ready?
No. When has that stopped you?
Matt Oakes of Silver Screen Riot. More bloat than float. Eh? More bloat than float, Alexis? Huh? Huh? I'm actually elbowing nothing, by the way. What was that?
Me or him?
You.
I told Eddie to go fly down to Tampa and bite you.
Yeah, Mark. I'm more mad at you than him for that one. You had a choice, sir. You could have looked at that and gone, you know what? I don't think so. And instead, you went, no, this.
Wait. Here's another one. Roger Tennis of CinemaClips.com. If Chapter 2 supplies king-size chills. Eh?
Somebody wants to get a quote on the DVD box.
King-size chills, anybody? Eh?
Oh, God.
Okay, just also for the record, given how much Stephen King cameos and adaptations of his work, this might be his best one.
I'll give you that.
Josh Larson of Larson on Film could have been called Jump Scares the Movie.
No, it couldn't have. Shut up.
And I hope you get syphilis from her.
Jump Scares the Movie was the Texas Chainsaw Massacre remake sequel.
No kidding. Or, oh crap, what was it? The Grudge. Nothing but jump scares. Just nothing but jump scares in The Grudge.
And again, if it's a well-done jump scare, I'll give it credit.
Okay, this really is the last one.
Sure it is.
Barry Hertz of the Globe and Mail, top critic.
Is that Peter's
whoa,
brother?
stop. The what?
Globe and Mail, top critic.
Globin or Global?
Globe and Mail.
Sorry.
Like M-A-L-E or...
Oh my gosh.
M-A-
Globe, G-L-O-B-E, and A-N-D, Mail, M-I-A-M-A-I-L. Top critic. Are we good now?
Enunciate.
Okay.
Could I get it in a sentence, sir?
Yes, as soon as you take your microphone out of your pants.
Sorry, Mark. You had to reuse. A burn. Jason wins that round. 10-8.
Okay. Aw.
Make me laugh.
When the nightmare becomes a daydream, it is best to call it a day, ladies and gentlemen. It is best to call it a day.
Take the pedantic shit back to college English.
And with that, I'm calling it a night.
I mean, look, buddy, I'm not going to call you day no matter how much you ask.
All right. So tomorrow on the Metal Hammer of Doom, we'll be reviewing Killswitch Engage Atonement. Onslaught month is all month long. We've got volumes 1 and 2 in the can. Next week is volume 3, and then volume 4 debuts on September 23rd. And then we kick off October, which is all scary Halloween-type trick-or-treat stuff, with Gotham by Gaslight. We got a Gotham by Gaslight source material, and then Alexis will be joining me for TV Party tonight for the Gotham by Gaslight animated movie. Meanwhile...
In a movie.
What was that?
That's actually a nice animated movie.
Yes.
Also, for the record, this is what passes as horror for Mark.
Anyway, Alexis will actually be with me this Thursday. We'll be reviewing She-Ra Season 3. And then Friday night, myself and Robert Winfree will be doing alternative coverage for Devin Haney versus Zaire Abdulayev.
You know nothing about either fighter. Why are you asking me to do this?
On DAZN. That's Friday night.
You don't even have an answer.
Because it's content, baby, and people actually listen to this stuff. Believe it or not, I know you don't.
You are aware that too much bad content is going to inherently limit our ceiling, right?
Nah, never. We're only growing.
Silly. Shit, we can only go up from here.
That is not true.
Speaking of getting it up, myself and Pat Mullen will be doing a watch-along for Bloodsport 2, Josh Burnett's Bloodsport 2 on the Fight Network. We've got reviews of The Dark Crystal, Age of Resistance on the 17th, and a review of WWE Clash of the Champions. We got Tarja in the Raw on the Metal Hammer of Doom.
Have you actually watched Age of Resistance yet?
I'm halfway through it.
Okay.
And then myself and Sean Comer will be doing an on-trial for the original Dark Crystal movie. And then I'm taking a break on the 20th to take my wife to go see Downton Abbey. But Saturday, we're back in the saddle again. Victor Curcado and Robert Winfree, maybe possibly could be, will be doing some British boxing. Andrew Shelby versus Jay Harris on ESPN+. Then we've got Damn You Hollywood for Rambo Last Blood, Corn the Nothing, Disenchantment Season 2, and she turned on the buzzsaw, and then that's that. That's all we got for the month of September. So, Robert, do your plugs.
I'm looking forward to talking with Mark about Dark Crystal Age of Resistance. In no small part because I like a good tragic prequel, and I don't mean to spoil a movie that's literally older than I am, but I wouldn't get too attached to the Gelfling.
Yeah, they don't last long. But you
This
do have...
Saturday, hang on. This Saturday, you will find me covering UFC on ESPN Plus 16 in the MMA Zone of 411 Mania. The thought of the sweet, sweet violence between Justin Gaethje and Donald Cerrone is kind of sustaining me through parts of what Mark makes me do. So
I'm kind of jealous because, I mean, granted, I'll be watching Bloodsport and that's fun too, but I want to watch both. How can I can't watch both. I want to watch both.
Look, your decisions about your life and how you live it are your own. Sunday, I will be hosting the 411 Ground and Pound MMA podcast. This week, I will be by myself. Jeff has a prior commitment. This past Sunday, Jeff and I got together. We reviewed UFC 242, where Jeff, again, made his passionate plea for Tony Ferguson being the man to stop the rampaging monster that is Khabib Nurmagomedov. We talked about that event, some of the fallout. We previewed the Gaethje versus Cerrone card. We talked about news of the week, including BJ Penn being potentially done with the UFC. Sort of. It's a thing that could get even uglier from a legal standpoint, but we get into that a little bit, so you can listen to us talk about that. And a few other bits of news from the week. Again, a few fights got made. Nate Diaz versus Jorge Masvidal is going to main event UFC 244 in Madison Square Garden. Woo! So there's that to look forward to.
Yeah.
Apparently, The Rock is working very hard to be the man to strap the BMF belt around whoever wins that. He said he would really like to because he's from Miami, as is Jorge Masvidal, and he said he's looking forward to the fight. Masvidal responded on Twitter and said, if at all possible, I'm going to tell Dana I want you to be the person to strap that sucker around my waist. And The Rock's response was, if at all possible, hell yeah, I'll make the time and be there. Because The Rock is living the life all men wish they could live. So you can listen to us again. Go through news. This coming week will be a review of UFC on ESPN Plus 16 and a preview of UFC fight, UFC and ESPN Plus 17, Rodriguez versus Stevens. Yeah, that's not a good card. And all the news, including a bunch of fights that got made today. Ronaldo Jacare Souza moving up to light heavyweight to fight Jan Blachowicz. Stephen Thompson versus Vicente Luque.
Wonder Boy!
Knew you were going to do that. You always do, for reasons that remain unclear to anyone with a functional cranium. So again, you can tune in for that on...
Boy! Go on.
Okay, that was just not nice.
All right, Mark, let's try to get through this, or I'm going to fall asleep.
You can find me doing that. You can find me doing that Sundays. If Mark will shut up and let me get through this, I am going to try to write something about Khabib, and it's one of those things where I know everything I want to say in my head. I even have it organized in my head, but every time I sit down to type, everything just stops.
Can I take a guess that part of it is, Dear Khabib, I fancy you?
You would be deeply and profoundly inaccurate.
Oh, I think that's how you should start it, though.
I will most certainly not. It would be disingenuous to all parties concerned to be that untruthful.
Go, or I'm going to yell at Wonder Boy again.
Yeah, and again, I'll be back for all the reviews that Mark mentioned. I hope you will all continue to come back and put up with our nonsense, however you find us. If you have a friend that you think would enjoy the show, please point them in our direction. If you have an enemy that you would like to annoy, point them in our direction. We're happy to oblige for as long as possible.
If you have a friend that you no longer want to be friends with, point him in our direction.
That'll work too. However you find us, whatever app you happen to do that through, whatever service, thank you. Please give us a review. If you think this is shit, tell us. Tweet Mark. I want you to bury him in that if at all possible.
Mark Raduiich on Twitter, at Mark Raduiich.
So please, again, thank you very much for your continued support. You can support us on Patreon if you're so inclined. A single $1 a month will get you access to elements of our content. The entire backlog of a show I used to host called Everyone Loves a Bad Guy. Movie watch-alongs that are any future instances of TV reviews that are of older shows. So if you want to listen to Mark talk about The Wire explicitly and be on an intentional show designed for him to talk about The Wire, you're going to have to do so via Patreon.
I won't be wearing any clothing at all during that, by the way.
Thankfully, it is an entirely audio format.
I'm tapping out on that.
No visuals.
Yeah, have a nice night, and I will talk to you guys later.
Is he really gone? Because he didn't do his plugs.
Probably. You can find Jason over on, Pigskin Pick'em?
Who knows? Just say WTM.
You can find Jason on WTM doing stuff now that football season is back in full swing. Give that a listen. He puts a lot of work into that. So support Jason.
He's still here. Jason, just do your own damn plugs. Or not.
Either he's really committed or you misread Skype.
It's saying he's still on the call.
I'm going to... Look. Follow Jason where you can. Let's let Alexis do her plugs before she taps out and just throws stuff at our heads.
No, I've been kind of freaking out over here because it turns out Eddie likes to sometimes fall asleep with his eyes open, and when he's dreaming that he's chasing the fluffy bunny rabbits, it looks like he's having a seizure.
Okay. I appreciate that so much. Thank you for that.
All right, where are you selling stuff?
All right, Honeysuckle Rose Creations, the intersection of geek and chic. This coming weekend, we are going to be at CMOCon in Poplar Bluffs. This is our first time appearing at this show. Little last-minute change in the scheduling, but I'm going to be there. I'm going to be debuting all of our ribbon chokers. We have a bunch of new designs. Really looking forward to it. Week after that, I am going out to Cincinnati for the Cincinnati Comic Expo. This is a show that we've been going to for years, and I love it. Also really enjoying it because we've got a little more space there, so we get to set up our custom charm station. Come to our table. You can make your own keychains, bracelets, necklaces, earrings. The list is endless. We've got a ton of stuff for you to play with. We love seeing people come out and seeing them just unlock their creativity and create some really amazing things.
You got to bring some She-Ra stuff with you, seeing as you're talking about it this Thursday.
You know, I've been trying to design some She-Ra stuff, but it has not been easy. I'm also desperate to try to make some My Hero Academia things because I do not watch the anime, and my anime advisor just bitterly quit. So I'm really trying to get into that, and I need to find some people who can help me with that.
Oh, God, I hate to do this, but what do you need?
Nope, off the show. Off the show. Off the show. For the love of Christ. 3 hours.
All right. As always, you can find us on Facebook, Instagram, and Under Protest Twitter, and we have our stores on Etsy and Handmade at Amazon. Stores restock might be a little slow just because, again, we got 2 shows back-to-back, so I don't always have time to restock in between my heavy travels. But, you know, if you've got something in mind, let me know. If you go there and there was something you thought was going to be there and it's not, contact me. It may just be a case of I can't restock it until I'm back in town. Let me know. Whatever you want, I will get it to you. I want to make my customers happy, and I want to get you that piece of jewelry that is going to make you smile. Honeysuckle Rose Creations, intersection of geek and chic.
All right, folks. I hope you've enjoyed a review of a movie that was almost as long as the goddamn movie. So for Robert, Alexis, and Jason, this has been Damn You Hollywood. Be well, be safe, and behave.
It's the semi-annual sale at Mattress Firm. We're bringing you savings of up to $400 on our top-rated mattresses, like a Beautyrest Greenwood Queen mattress, now just $499. Explore our selections at mattressfirm.com and visit your nearest store to experience the bed of your dreams before you buy. We've got the best beds, and with savings of up to $400, you know it's the best price too. Your budget stretches further at Mattress Firm. Restrictions apply. Valid at participating locations only. For offer details, visit mattressfirm.com/sale.
Let's say you just bought a house. Bad news is, you're one step closer to becoming your parents. You'll proudly mow the lawn. Ask if anybody noticed you mowed the lawn. Tell people to stay off the lawn. Compare it to your neighbor's lawn. And complain about having to mow the lawn again. Good news is, it's easy to bundle home and auto through Progressive and save on your car insurance, which, of course, will go right into the lawn. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company, affiliates, and other insurers. Discount not available in all states or situations.